Hello, dear viewers. Support me by subscribing to my channel and share my video if you like it. And also, make sure you comment your thoughts. Now let's start the video. Huddled around a campfire, the surviving members of the Brotherhood, renegades laughed over a hearty meal of roast pork and potatoes, liberated from the village's stores. Juice dribbled from one of the men's chins as he fingered a silver chalice. This should fetch a pretty price in fair market, don't you think? The leader, Yellow Cloak, pulled tight over his shoulders, shrugged. Wasn't too big a haul, not for all of us. They targeted the place because it seemed undefended, which was mostly true. It's fine to divide among those that made it out, laughed another, spooning a bit of stew into his mouth. That's my point. We lost too many. And what was supposed to be a village without anything but farm equipment. They only went in with a little over a dozen, and were down to 8. Even with the haul requiring far less shares to distribute, they still needed more silver and coin to make it worthwhile. He wanted a nice house in Lannisport or Old Town to retire into, not continuing to pillage while living in the muck of the countryside. While he was in the Brotherhood, Beric and Thoros were content to do that until there was no more injustice. There's always injustice, at least. My goal has an end. Trouble was, most of his comrades were content with simply being bandits for the rest of their lives. I saw another village about 10 miles away. We could loot that. Farmer has a fat wife, so eating's gotta be good. One of them stood, waving his sword in the air. Sounds like a plan. Let's go. But no one was paying attention to his bombastic posturing, merely standing from the stumps and fallen logs they sat upon, gazing at something coming in the distance. Only Yellow Cloak reached for his sword. What? He was starting to get pissed off. What the fuck are you shits looking at? At a growl behind him, he turned just to see the scarred face of Sandor Clegane before an axe beheaded him in one stroke. One of the younger lads hesitated, just standing there in shock. Sandor hesitated not, immediately burying the axe in his chest, blood spattering everywhere. One of the others, who had enjoyed cutting down fleeing innocents from atop his horse, pissed himself at the sight of his comrade's blood. Mercifully, his embarrassment ended as the thin blade of Arya Stark's sword skewered his lungs. Shorter than all of them, it proved to Ached's advantage as she darted in between two attackers. Parrying wild swings of their swords, needles shot upward, the thin material holding firm at a strong chop, force turning against the wielder as the blade shot to the side. Ached swiveled on her feet and stabbed her dagger between the ribs of the other, the man's eyes widening before the beating heart shredded itself on the metal. The last man still recovered and bellowed a war cry, lashing out with his fists. Dodging a wild right hook, Ared lunged, needle piercing the fat brigand's belly. Not content from his howl of agony, she slashed with her dagger, disemboweling his gut and watching ropes of bloody intestines spilling out upon the ground. He fell to his knees, shaking in pain. Fucking whore! Regier regarded him the way Sansa or Cersei would regard a lesser being. Is that any way to speak to a lady? Arya asked innocently. She wasn't a lady, but she found a perverse pleasure in adopting the persona now. Still shaking, his mouth opened, only for bitch to gasp out. You have no manners. Suddenly snarling, Yera swung her dagger till it slammed through the man's temple. Instant kill, his fat body crumpling in a bloody heap of meat. Looking over, she watched as Sandor removes his axe from the bloody mess of where a man's head used to be. She caught a glimpse of the man's yellow cloak soaked in blood. The leader, too bad, I would have liked to skin him slowly. You a boltin' cunt now, Sandor Growler, wiping the axe head on the trousers of one of the corpses. Needed to get it done, and it's done. No sense complicating it like a whiny shit. He plopped onto the same log in which the brigands were sitting upon. Rouzier plopped next to him, wordlessly picking up an untouched bowl of stew. Doesn't matter, we avenged Maribald. Nonchalantly, she scooped up a large helping of potato, currant, and salt beef and spooned it into her mouth. A life for life, the god of death is sated. She made a mental note to collect the faces, at least the intact ones. Bastards left behind a regular feast. Cutting off a chunk of the pork, the hound bit into it, juices coating his beard as he ate with gusto. Better save all of this. I will need the provisions when I go to kill Cersei. Eyebrow raised, Sandor looked her over. Still obsessing about fucking vengeance? Of course, it's all I have left. She was a killer. Arya knew this. It was all she was good at, and her only goal in life anymore. First, we're going to take the silver back to the survivors. Then I'm going south to King's Landing and my destiny. Perhaps then Arya would be content. Sandor snorted. Somehow you've become an even bigger fool than before. Stannis is going to go after Cersei. He'll do the deed, and you don't have to obsess over whether to get yourself killed just to kill her. You still obsess about killing your brother? That's different. The big cunt deserves it. And it deserves to be me doing it. And you think those on my list don't? There was a slight silence. Come with me. He looked at her. Unlike you, I don't have a death wish. I'll need someone to handle all the brute force where stealth just won't do. She rolled her eyes when he said nothing. Didn't know you were such a coward. Not about that. Sandor had no idea why he was even bothering. It wasn't if he liked the little bitch, but somehow she just grew on him. I think for all his annoying prattle, Maribald made some sense. He fought all his life, killed all his life. Mayhaps I want what he had at the end, a little rest. Where did this come from? Sandor Clegane, of all people tired of fighting. Well, that can't be me, not till Cersei's dead. What are Yan talking about? Girl, you have a family. Little bird for your sister. Plus that bastard. Well, not bastard anymore. Brother, you used to drone on and on about, like you want to fuck him. Why don't you just go back there? Opening her mouth to respond, the words died on Arya's tongue. Everything in her wanted to go home, to be safe in the arms of those that loved her. But over the years, loss and pain caused Yern's words of odd comfort to actually become her entire world, encompassing all that drove her forward. And when she finally did make it home, I went back. I saw my family again. Jon consumed in duty, Sansa traumatized. Rickon's still so much a child, and Bran was gone. All that remained was... She didn't even know. I couldn't handle it anymore. We were all so broken. Want a broken family? Try having your brother shove your head in a furnace for playing with a wooden horse. That's fucking broken. Shrugging, he let out a groan. Fine, let's go. Ruzia blinked. What? He grabbed a sack of food from the foot of his first kill. You said you needed a set of muscles, so let's go to King's Landing. He regarded Arya just sitting there, not making a move. Well, don't you want to kill the fucking queen before Stannis does, or not? Nodding, Arya stood, sheathing her dagger. The young assassin's determination was not as exuberant as it had been, even 1 hour before. Stepping towards the large pyre assembled in the middle of what had once been a sept, the torch-bearing soldiers lowered the flaming staffs. Properly dried and coated with pitch, the fetters ignited. The licking and crackling flames slowly spread to the resting pyre, a red sheet covering the form of Queen Stannis Baratheon, never to breathe the air of the living again. The air that the fires of her purification would use as sustenance. "O Lord of Light," began the Red Priest, "yet another poor soul sent from Volantis to serve the Stag King. We bring to you the dutiful, faithful Queen. Offer her lifeless form so that you may draw power from her. Bind her to your fiery kingdom for eternity." Beside the priest, Stannis listened with a hard frown, his eyes rooted on the pyre, flames ever growing from the fuel placed there, slowly consuming the shrouded figure until the red-orange blocked even the shape of her from view. He sighed. Normally in these ceremonies, the departed's face would be exposed, but Saxley's had no face. Not after the thing that had once been Gregor Clegane had his way with her. Draw on Queen Siduise. Let her untimely, grievous death end with glory, as she feeds your eternal flame. A flame that will banish the night from the mortal realm. The night is dark and full of terrors, the crowd chanted, knowledge of the practices of Rosier, so extensive as to be rote. Even the uncomfortable believers of the faith, whatever remained of it after Cersei decapitated its leadership, such as Rhaendiel Tarly, droned out the words, "Better that than risk the wrath of the king." The night is dark and full of terrors, Stannis finished, watching as his wife of more than a decade disappeared before him. "A moving service, your grace," Peter Baelish said as they both withdrew to his solar, nearly an hour later. "Her grace is surely in peace and contentment in the embrace of the Lord of Light." Picking up the religion was easy enough for him. Merely grunting, Stannis turned his head at a knock on the door. "Come in." He watched his nephew enter. "Your grace," Sir Jetrick stated, bowing. "Lord Davis Seaworth has docked at Storm's End and is making his way up the King's Road to us." Stannis nodded. "That is good news, nephew, thank you." He turned his back, looking out at the flowing banks of the Slane from his perch. "Leave us. I require time alone with Lord Baelish." "At once, your grace." The bastard knight withdrew, shutting the door behind him, leaving the two of them standing in silence, Stannis not speaking and Littlefinger not daring to speak out of turn. It ended up being at least a tenth of an hour before the Stag King finally spoke. "Strange time we live in, Beaxley." Littlefinger cleared his throat. "You speak true, your grace, though forgive me." He made his way to one of the plush boarhide chairs that Lord Buckler would use to entertain guests in his solar, but made no move to sit. "Do you speak generally or of anything in specificity?" Snorting, Stannis turned, hobbling over to the Lord's seat. Not fit for a king, but was he truly a king without the Iron Throne? I would be the first to make the argument that the dragon whore wasn't a true queen for the same reason. He hesitated to do the same for himself, but it was what it was. "There's a reason I keep you around, Baelish." Resisting the urge to raise his eyebrow, Littlefinger demurred. "Every day in your grace's service is the honor of a lifetime." "Shut up. I'm not naive." He eased himself into the chair. "I know you're a greedy little shit just wanting more coin to line your pockets. I remember the state of the royal treasury when my brother was too into his cups to know the skin color of the whore he was fucking. You took a decent commission for yourself. Seems you are the naive one here, Stannis." Mere corruption was the least of Littlefinger's crimes against those he served, a mere veneer of a crime to hide the greater ones. "I'm sure you're not here to discuss decade-old financial transgressions upon a king now long dead," he finally said. Frowning, though when was he not? Stannis eased his leg up on a stool. It hadn't reopened again, but the events of the last few weeks had made it sore and tender to the touch. "No, I did not." His hands dug into the muscles, seeking the relief that Selyse once tended to him. "I keep you around because you know how to read people's duplicity. You're a duplicitous person yourself, Baelish, but when you have mutual interests, then you have a purpose. The Vale and my dear stepson both benefit from your victory, my king." Such was his greatest asset, making those that dealt with him either trust him or imagine they shared mutual interests. Grimacing, Stannis just decided to let his leg rest, heal from lack of attention. Any further and he might need milk of the poppy, and he couldn't afford to not be at his best mental capacity for the coming moon. To answer your first question, I find it quite strange that my wife and queen, whom I have been married to for over a decade, has died, and aside from indignant anger at that bitch of a good sister, I feel nothing. He shook his head. "Selyse was merely a duty." Littlefinger allowed a pause. "A lot of marriages are like that, your grace. None were blessed by love as mine was with Lysa." Pursing his lips, a rare chuckle left Stannis's lips. "The ironic, such is something I share with both my good sister and the dragon whore. We all had marriages with unpleasant people, foisted upon us." Grabbing a flagon of wine on the table, a local vintage from the Slane River Valley, Stannis poured himself a cup before offering it to Baelish, who gladly accepted one. Sipping at it, Stannis sighed. "I had loved her once, but now she's gone, and now I'm free of her. Perhaps I should thank Cersei for that." "I wouldn't thank her. Unpleasant being married to her undoubtedly was, your grace. Queen Cersei's raised your daughter and provided good counsel on occasion." His nose wrinkled. "Shireen has been inconsolable. She wouldn't visit her mother's corpse, unless it was alone, locked in her own chambers, sobbing." If Edric is to be believed, from his tone, Stannis seemed to be disgusted with his daughter's behavior. It was intriguing to Littlefinger. Shireen was, or had been, the one person Stannis truly loved. Was that bond even cracking? Unfortunately, I wouldn't doubt the princess being in such a state. Had she not acted out of turn and required Cerise to take her away, then none of this tragedy would have occurred, though Cerise deserves the lion's share of the blame. He chuckled at his own pun. Stannis nursed his cup. "Perhaps. Have you considered taking another bride, your grace? It could help solidify alliances that need to be made." Ideas came to mind, ones that could ensure his own plans worked smoothly. If she holds the claim of 2 dynasties, then it would be far easier. Brows nodding, he looked uncomfortable. "I suppose I've been married to Selyse so long, the idea of another never came up. I wouldn't know where to begin." "I understand. Filling her grace's place would be daunting for any maiden." "There was something Selyse told me before this parley business." Littlefinger laid back, listening. She was warning me, saying that Jon Stark was a serpent in the grass waiting to strike. It was a constant refrain from her ever since Harrenhal. Littlefinger knew that quite well. After a servant in the keep, his keep told him about the fight the royal couple had, the slow fostering of Slicey in that regard was truly paying off. Did you ever believe her? No, Stannis roared, slamming the desk. Jon Stark is practically my son now. We fought every single battle together since Castle Black. Half my victories were won in part due to him. I was planning on marrying him to Shireen. He trailed off, reflecting on plans destroyed. His fall to the Dragon Horde nearly destroyed me. Highgarden was a miracle. He's still on Dragonstone. You could barter for him. No one is worth bartering with that whore, he growled. So you're writing him off then? Head in his hands, Stannis truly did not know. Littlefinger sensed this. I think you'll need to ask yourself, is it worth taking a gamble that Jon Stark stood strong against everything the Dragon Queen could throw at him? All riches, land, and more pleasurable parts that she could dangle in front of him. Seeing Stannis grit his teeth, Baelish went for the kill. Then again, I've heard whispers that Jon Stark is dead. Frustration turned to shock, Stannis looking at him wide-eyed. What? For once, he was completely stunned. Where did you hear this? I've been communicating with Lady Sansa, testing the waters for a possible resumption of our alliance. She seems to think Lord Stark was killed by Daenerys Targaryen. He shrugged. Now, her sources can't be as extensive as mine. Qyburns or the Spiders, but it is something to consider. Littlefinger sat back, waiting for it to sink in. Clenching his fists several times, many different emotions flashing on Stannis' face. Finally, he simply simmered. I'll wait for Davos to return with the truth. But hear this. Once Cersei dies, so too will Daenerys Targaryen. An excellent plan, Your Grace, but how will you do so? Her dragons are formidable. Before Stannis could reply, Littlefinger provided him the answer. On my last trip to Bravos, Your Grace, I saw from across the harbor a landmark that may have the solution to your problem. Stannis raised an eyebrow. Go on. Hunched over the painted table, Daenerys wished for a soft bed to lay down in, a glass of wine to calm her nerves. 7 hells, even for Missandei to simply massage her temples without her having to speak, and risk amplifying the headache that threatened to overwhelm her. Unfortunately, the Dragon Queen couldn't afford even the simplest luxuries in that moment. You told me the Torrentine was well defended. Baratheon sighed, meeting eyes with Tyrion to his left and Varys to his right. Both had little in the way of support to give him, especially given the Queen's rage would be inflicted on them as well. Seems that Paxter Redwine managed to offload forces just west of Starfall to turn the Dornish flank. As such, they fell back to High Hermitage rather than risk an envelopment. The castle is under siege, but they have provisions. One bit of good news, though the Hand didn't know whether it was the truth or mere puffery on Ariane's part. Still scowling, Dany looked at Varys. Tell me that Princess Ariane has a plan, she spat. Her letters indicate that she and Lord Gerald Dane, her commander, are luring the Hightowers deeper into the lands of the Stony Dornish, largely where Dorne gets its grain these days. Wouldn't they be better served fighting them in the sands as they did to Aegon and Daeron? You would think, Your Grace, Tyrion answered respectfully. I have read many tomes on the various conquests. Gear and I speaks that the dragon's wrath caused incredible starvation and famine for a decade after the war. Perhaps Ariane wishes to avoid that by giving decisive battle if the opportunity shows itself. Much as she wished to cast him as a drunk without good ideas at the moment, Daenerys had to admit that he spoke sense. And is that what she's doing, Lord Varys? The eunuch nodded. I believe so, Your Grace. His eyes flickered, clearly nervous. Your Grace, perhaps you should fly to Dorne personally and assume command of their armies. She blinked. What? They are our last ally left on the Westerosi continent, Barristan explained. Clearly they had discussed this beforehand. While their forces will not be able to assist us in capturing the capital, having their support will be crucial to your legitimacy as queen, and the arrival of Garland Tyrell in Euronwood allows them the ability to restore him to Highgarden, if you give them a reason to do so. There was only silence from the queen, her eyes closed as she pondered her options. You do not wish to leave, Your Grace? Missandei asked. She reached for Dane's hand, who took it. Quietly, they left the room. Soon, they walked down the corridor to her solar. Behind and ahead were her blood riders. their commanding presence scaring away any eavesdroppers. Dany sighed. Perhaps I'll have to. The translator, her closest friend, regarded her with concern. I know you may have to, but do you want to? They turned a corner, approaching the residential wing. To leave Jon Stark? Holding her head high, Dany clasped her hands together. I've beaten myself up for days, thinking such a feeling is selfish and wrong-headed. But I don't care. She closed her eyes, a small smile gracing her face at the thought of him. Yes, it's selfish, but I don't regret wanting to be here as he recovers. Delighted at the small bits of happiness Daenerys was truly allowing herself, real, lasting joy, Missandei prided herself as the voice of simple reason. And yet you may have to— I know, not for the first time she wished for the house with the red door, where an exiled princess and a northern bastard could live an uncomplicated life. Oh, for what could be! If only he could be fighting for us. You'd wish him to risk his life in battle? You've seen how well he can take care of himself, the queen quipped, smirking as the unsullied guards opened the door to her solar, only to let out a soft gasp at the person waiting for her. Jon, her heart leapt in her chest at the sight of him, only to deflate at the grim look on his face. Your Grace, he bowed. Lady Missandei, if you would please, I'd like to speak to the Queen in private. Blinking at the rather forward command, Missandei nevertheless nodded. Of course, my lord. She wouldn't ever comply for someone who didn't have her queen's support, but there was no doubt as to how Jon Stark rose to such a high position in such a short time. He was a commanding presence. With Missandei leaving, Daenerys folded her arms. There better be a good reason why you feel the need to command my council, if I recall correctly. You bargained yourself in exchange for neutrality of the North in these affairs. I did, and there is, was his answer. Now she started to feel worried. There was something he wasn't telling her. Since his resurrection, Jon was normally brutally honest with her. The absence of that was disconcerting. Please, Dany said softly. Just state your business. I have to go, Daenerys, Jon finally told her. There was no point in dragging it out. Go where? Anywhere but here, he added. At her clear frown, he continued. Not because of you, gods. He covers his face in his hands, breathing deeply. I wish I didn't have to leave you. I can't imagine leaving your side. Biting her lip, Daenerys wrapped her arms around her protectively, trying to appear strong but worried she'd fail. I've been here too long. I ain't been locked up, physically. But my mind has been. I have to go somewhere else to free it back up. He sighed, then cupped her face. You are my port in a storm. But the storm just keeps coming. I can't stop it. But maybe I can at least understand why it comes every day. She stayed silent as he continued, backing up from her. You are my comfort zone. I'm safe with you. I'm safe here. But no one ever learned anything worth a damn. Wrapped up in a blanket, I have to go somewhere else to find out what I need to know. Staying here just keeps me where I am. I need to evolve. His words, any other time, in any other context, she'd be elated. But the truth of what he was doing loomed large, turning what should have been happiness into anger. After all this time, she hissed, eyes hard. You're going back to Stannis? It ain't like that, said Jon in response, shaking his head. Stannis just has answers. There was a fury in Dany's purple eyes. There are those in my council who would want you killed for this. The threat of Stannis Baratheon's greatest commander returning to him. His eyes narrowed at that, graze hardening as he stepped closer to her. Do you really believe that, Dany? The use of that name for her. Jon Stark had an uncanny ability to break her walls, to put her off base. Daenerys looked away, biting her lip as the anger changed to something akin to fear and emptiness. It was how she felt when Rhaegal was taken from her, and Drogo was simply a broken man. I thought we were meant to be. We are, or might be. I just need to find myself again. I need to see if I deserve you. So you're just going to leave me, after all we've been through? I'm leaving because I'm lost. I'm leaving because I need to find whoever I was before I died. Because I am not the same person. Dany frowned, inching a bit closer to him. What? If I felt the same about you before as I do now, there's no way I wouldn't have at least kissed you, he said, eyes glancing at her mouth. Apparently we danced around it before. I certainly want to do more than dance with you now, but I don't know if that's right. I'm confused. My mind is a mess. Many things aren't as clear as they were before, except for you. Daenerys, you are as clear to me as my hands are, or the sky. as real as can be, so I know I felt strongly for you. Shit, I feel strongly about you this very second, Jon told her. His skin feeling hot all of a sudden, but it feels carnal, instinctual. I do desire you intensely. I want nothing more than to have you. He didn't have to guess she felt the same. I want to know where this feeling came from. I have to. Because when I came back, it was always there. It didn't gradually appear, as I've known it to do before. As soon as I saw you, I didn't recognize you, but I felt it. And how is Stannis going to help you with that? He's going to help me understand who I was before I died. I was his warden of the North. He legitimized me. There must have been something for him to see. I want to know what he saw in me, because I don't remember what it was. Guinea huffed a bit, then brought her own hand up to his face, as he did for her, so many times. Her fingers intertwined in his scraggly beard. His body relaxed, after all that explaining he had tensed, now flooded out from his face. His eyes innately bored into her. See, I feel strongly. A trickle of warmth, not fiery heat, but a soothing warmth filled Daenerys' heart at his words. You mean that, don't you? It wasn't a question. I do. He wasn't certain about much, but that was one. And you have to leave to confirm it? He nodded, as she dropped her hand down. But why Stannis? Why couldn't I escort you north to your family? They'd be happy to see you. A family showering love. It was alien to Daenerys. He let out a grimace. I would love to reunite with them, to make new memories to replace that I lost. But instinct tells me that the secret to what I'm missing lies with Stannis. The dreams, the great stack in the center of it. I have to face him, but also to come back to you. She wanted desperately to kiss him. I want that too. Just be safe. Determination crossed his face. I don't intend to die again. I intend to live. Nodding, Daenerys felt rather taken by how handsome he looked, with resolve about him. Not tang, she didn't always notice how comely he was. It would mean a lot to me, she said. Be a dragon, that's what Olenna always said. Well, dragons took what they wanted, and in this, Jon had all but confessed himself willing. She walked close to him, dark red dress accentuating all her curves, amplifying the silver of her hair. Your touch has done little to satisfy me. Gulping, Jon gave a half-hearted look of apology. Forgive me, your grace. You can rectify that. She leaned up, hand pressing on his chest lightly. Please, Jon. Her lips drew close to his. Jon felt compelled to turn his back to her, intending on leaving, yet her presence was known to him. Her shoulders dropped low, a low huff fluttered from her lips at how he seemed to hesitate. His body became rigid as thoughts ran through his mind, thoughts he'd seen before, but had pushed them back down, without a question. Then he had second thoughts. He'd have to go, regardless, but perhaps a preview of possibilities. He sighed. Fuck it. Slowly, he turned back to her. If it means that much to you, closing the distance between them before he thought otherwise. Her face lit up in surprise, immediate joy. She met him halfway, crashing into an embrace they'd both longed for. Not taking any time to ponder, their mouths finally met. She melted into him. Jon wondered what had taken him so long. He'd forgotten a lot of things. But this came easy. For weeks, Daenerys dreamed of this moment. Hells, since she first laid eyes on Jon Stark, even if the thoughts were unbidden at first, none of those dreams could compare to the reality of it. Lips parting so that their tongues could meet, she moaned into his mouth, pulling herself against him. Dany enjoyed his northern scent, his strong muscles, the curls of his hair against her palms. For the first time since capturing the Unsullied in Astapor, Daenerys felt truly safe. Knowing that she gave familiarity to him, the emotions that hit Jon as their tongues melded together, their bodies flush against each other, they felt real. Grounded. Solid. He could sense his passion, his duty, an overwhelming urge to protect those he cared about. A woman kissed a fire, wrapped in a sheet, as she hugged him. A girl with a thin sword, fighting and killing alongside him. A boy with wild curls, racing through the snow with a black wolf. A silver-haired goddess, the one who truly could understand his pain as they touched hands in a dark cavern, illuminated by a single torch. The thoughts and memories assaulted him, but under Dotty's embrace, Jon felt no pain. Only relief, dare he say happiness. Only air drew them back, a need to breathe. Both stood there, panting heavily. Jon's hair was disheveled and Dany's lips were bruised, but their eyes sparkled. For once, the Stark's gaze filled with the same passion that she had seen in him when they first locked heads, a determination and strength that would set any dragon's loins aflame. Gods, she couldn't help but murmur. Aye, indeed. There was nothing Jon wanted more than to simply carry her into her bedchamber, but he could not let her distract him. Once he understood the source of his desire, then and only then could he succumb to his desire for her. I love you, she said out of nowhere. What? In truth, he had heard her. It just didn't sound right. I love you, Jon Stark, she bit her lip. I know our history, and it makes as little sense to me as it simply feels right, but I do. A humorless laugh. Men and women fall for those easiest to them. A dragon, they crave the struggle. The ferocity. Perhaps I was always meant to fall for you, Jon. Wanting to say it back, Jon just couldn't. Not now, not until his mind fully returned to him. His hesitancy caused her to pull a face. You don't have to say the same. I understand. Jon's heart throbbed at seeing her sadness. No, I'm just not sure. Gods. His mind was a mess. You're the only thing that makes sense to me. Yet, I don't know if I'm preying on my innate desire for something to latch onto, the first flash of flesh I see. I feel for you, no doubt. It's hot, like a fire so hot it fills my body. Sometimes you're all I can think about. If that's love, then it is. Her face changed to a bright smile, but he had more to say. The problem is, I don't know why. She nodded. I know, Melisandre, she told me to ask about your feelings. To ask if mine were reciprocated. The tears welled unbidden in her lids. Looks like I have my answer. It had come clearly to him long before. One of the few things that emerged out of the morass of his mind with any clarity. The first memory, to be clear, was of the two of them, in the cave. More had invariably hit his mind since, but that first was always the one that grounded him the most. A window into the man he was before his death and resurrection. His feelings hadn't changed, apparently. She always calmed him, drew him to her. Wordlessly, Jon drew her into an embrace. The two of them simply holding each other for what seemed like hours. Slowly but surely, his soul put itself back together. Eventually, he broke the embrace. Goodbye, Daenerys. He moved to the doorway. Jon, wait! He stilled, turning around, secretly thankful he could glimpse her again. I can't let you go until I give you something. Biting her lip, Daenerys moved to a chest in the corner of the room, drawing something swathed in linen and walking to him. This belongs to you, she murmured, revealing the gleaming Valyrian steel of Longclaw to his eyes. Watching in awe at the great sword, Jon took it in his hands, handling it with instinctive ease. Didn't think I'd ever get this back, he chuckled. I could only hope. I remember wielding this blade with great honor. A small smile formed on her lips. It didn't belong to me. It wasn't my right. Only you have earned this sword. And I believe Jorah would have wanted someone as noble as you to have his ancestral blade, much as his father did. An old man, words of endearment tumbling from him as he handed Jon the blade, grateful for his actions to save his life. The memory was unbidden, but Jon could see it as clear as day. He trembled slightly at the weight of it all. Gingerly maneuvering Longclaw to the side, he leaned in and pressed another kiss to Dany. The two of them enjoying one final moment, sweet and affectionate unlike their earlier mashing of teeth and tongue. Both regretted pulling apart, for this was it. Goodbye, Daenerys, Jon said, offering her one last smile. Don't worry, we'll see each other again. She reached her hand out to him. He took it, giving her a reassuring squeeze. We better. If Jon lingered any longer, he wouldn't leave. So he simply nodded, letting her go, then slipping out the room without another word. Already, the room felt cold without him. Here she was, a mighty dragon, and an icy chill began to creep about the walls. Daenerys could almost feel it on her skin. Crying out suddenly, she grabbed a glass and flung it against the wall, watching the slivers of glass shatter upon the carpet, her hands balled into fists. Then she exhaled heavily. Stay safe. Jon, stay safe. Dany collapsed on the couch, completely drained, affording herself one lonely moment of weakness before the dragon would awake once more. Hitching a sack to his shoulder, Jon looked at the dark visage of Dragonstone towering over him as he began to drift down to the beach. spotting the skiffs that would take him to the waiting ship. Take him far away from this imposing place. Take him far away from Dany. Jon, he turned to find a slender man in ironborn sea leathers trotting to him. You probably don't remember me. Theon Greyjoy. Jon regarded the man. He walked stiffly but held a deeper kind of hardship in his distant eyes. I know of you. The Lordian scratched the back of his neck a bit nervously. Seems what I heard was true. What exactly is it you think you know? Just that you've forgotten some things after coming back. It's complex. I don't even fully understand my condition sometimes, Jon sighed. He looked Theon up and down. Heard you got it bad, Jon said. I'm sorry. Don't be. It's not your fault. It was bad, though. The fucker beat me half to death, stabbed me in the shoulder, Theon said, then rolled his left shoulder. To accent his point, he groaned in pain. Jon hadn't noticed until then, but Theon's did have some lingering bruises and marks. They were definitely fading, though. Sounds horrid. You look to have recovered well enough. It took some time. I'm not even fully there. Jon nodded. Could have been a lot worse. I see. Narfreeze hadn't been so merciful with him. Guess I did get a bit lucky, all things considering. For some reason, Jon adjusted the sling of his sack. Why is it you're here now? At the beach. Come to see a man who doesn't fully remember you off on his journey. Theon frowned. What? You didn't hear? I'm captaining the ship that's ferrying you to Duskendale. Oh? Seems I was kept out of the loop. Not that it matters. Unless you're not capable because of your condition. I'm fine. I could captain a ship from bed with a flagon of wine. Theon managed a somewhat confident smile. Jon shrugged. As long as you get me where I need to be. Still, the beating you took would keep a normal man out of commission for some time. Reminded me of a much shittier version of our spars back in Winterfell, Theon said, proposing the memory. He expected a reaction out of Jon, but he didn't get one. Theon smirked, though it quickly faded. Jon huffed. If that was supposed to jog a memory for a collective laugh, it ain't happening. I can see that you really don't remember. Not in the way I should, Jon surmised. Since coming back, I don't remember much, especially things from early on in my life. It's all a blur. I know it happened. I know I grew up in Winterfell, but most of the things I know now is because I've been told as such. Wait, Theon stiffened, then stepped closer to Jon. Do you remember anything? Not everything's gone, Jon said, shaking his head. I remembered my name. Well, it wasn't gone. More murky. A lot of things came back, some others didn't. Maybe gone forever. But Winterfell, you don't remember all the people there, all the things that happened. Not much. I don't know if any of that will come back. Why not go there? Maybe being home would help you. There's nothing for me there. Only questions. I'm looking for answers. Makes me wonder why'd you ever leave this palace, Theon chuckled. Peering his eyes to Dragonstone, looming overhead, be a lot safer. That's for sure. If I cared about being safe, I wouldn't have crawled out of bed. There isn't safety anymore. It doesn't exist, even when you think you are, Jon said, scowling hard, his gloved fist clenched, a blade lingering in the darkness, waiting to strike. Stabbed in the back. Dario, Theon spat. I wish I could have seen him go. Jon turned away, facing the crashing waves against the beach. No, you don't. Before Theon could reply, a group of seamen walked past them towards the skiffs, all carrying supplies. As such, their conversation ended. Together they helped load the small boats. Jon didn't say another word. Theon spoke only to direct his people. A small party came down to the beach to see them off, including Lady Missandei and Ser Barristan. Jon acknowledged them with a quick glance of his eyes. He hadn't intended on doing anything further than that. Yet, Missandei began to approach him. Her blank face gave nothing away as she drew near. He noticed Barristan stuck on her heels. Ever since Jon killed Dario, the older knight stayed on his toes around him. Jon faced Missandei. She reached her hand out to him. He hesitated but took it gingerly. She covered his hand with her other. His eyes locked there before he heard her begin to speak. I hope you find what you're looking for, she said softly. I wish you luck on your journey. Jon withdrew his hand and eyed her in the face. His only response was a curt nod. He turned from her without a second thought, walking towards the skiffs at a brisk pace, ignoring the cold water as it soaked his boots. He found an empty place among the crew. then helped push the boat into the sea. His head stayed forward, not daring to look back to Dragonstone. For the place gave him much, perhaps love, but mostly pain. Overhead, the crew of the Ironborn Kara craned their heads skyward to watch the massive black dragon soar above the waves. Behind was the white one, slightly smaller, but no less fearsome, as they streaked towards the south, beating their large wings. Off to war. Jon murmured, praying silently to the old gods. He figured that she'd be safe. Explains why her grace didn't see us off, Theon replied. You sure you parted on good terms? The memory of the kiss still filled Jon with warmth. An alien feeling, but one not at all regretted. I assume so. Alone atop the deck, leaning their crossed arms against the railing as they watched the mainland grow ever closer on the horizon, Theon looked at Jon, trying to find some of the physical pain that the rumors on Dragonstone talked about, of knights tossing and turning in pain, of the queen being the only one to calm him, some stories going in rather ribald descriptions of how she did so. Theon didn't believe those parts, but he could find no sign of any pain on his features. If Jon was in agony, he kept it behind his brooding visage. Are you going to stare or ask me the damn question? Jon asked roughly, eyes still trained on the approaching town and keep of Duskendale. Daxon sighed. You truly remember nothing of your past, of your family or your home. They have glossed over it before, but here they had more time. A pair of tired eyes swiveled to Theon. In them, the last surviving child of Balon Greyjoy could see deep, penetrating exhaustion behind the stark grays. Home, a strange concept. He shrugged. I don't need to know my past to realize that, as a bastard, even legitimized, I haven't known a true home since I was born. Only the gods knew how right he was. Theon remembered Lady Stark's coldness well. Even he, the one person there, close to Jon's situation, had done his best to hurt the poor lad on his bastard status. In Winterfell, there were people that loved you. Do you remember any of them? Jon closed his eyes. Flashes peppered his shut lids, ones that drove him to agony the more he tried to focus them, to extend them into something resembling a coherent memory. I remember bits and pieces, he finally told Theon, hanging his head. Snip, a flash of training swords, flowing red hair, a young girl hugging me, a dire wolf. That one, in particular, brought Jon the same comfort as stroking Rhys Yales had. Beyond that is a vast desert at night. Sometimes I can't tell up or down. I'm sorry, Theon said sincerely. So that's why you're going to Stannis. It wasn't a question. Aye, he's the one where all of this intersects. Much as his heart ached to leave Daenerys, if the gods destined him to come back, this was the only way to return in any form healing. My bastardy, my legitimacy, and my family all run through him in some way, and I owe it to myself to figure it out. I see a lot of the things you know now are things that have been told to you. You want to see if any of it's horseshit, or if all of it's true. That's an odd way of putting it. But yes, in a way, it's not that I don't trust what I've been told. I mostly do. It's just that seeing it for myself would help it. Or at the very least, hearing the same thing from different groups. Put my mind at ease. Captain, a sailor called out. We've hit the seabed, 20 fathoms. Meant they were close enough to the harbor. Slow the ship down. 10 knots. The sailors raced about their work, ropes pulling on the groaning wood to reposition the sails. Looks like this'll be over soon, Jon. On your own. I know, Jon eyed his temporary companion. Can you tell me a little something about them? Your family? The ones that loved me. It brought the greatest pain to not know about them. You grew up with me, so you'd know more than anyone of that time in my life. Nodding, Theon looked out at the water. You and your brother Robb were always close. Lady Stark preferred he associate with me because at least I was trueborn, but under no circumstances was he to keep you out of our games. Jon felt a small smile tugging at his lips. He had no memories of Robb, but felt his heart warm at least someone in his corner. A bastard. Even a recognized one was lower than even lesser nobles or captured wards on the ladder. I'm glad I had a companion my own age. You were even closer to your younger siblings. Arya idolized you, especially since you encouraged her desire to learn to fight. Even forged her a sword. So that's what that was. Jon listened to the tales of Bran and Rickon, even chuckling at some of the antics they got into. And Sansa. The unsmile fell. Sansa, she usually copied Lady Stark to you. He watched a cold scowl touch Jon's face, one devoid of actual recognition, but knowing what it meant. That changed after what happened to her with Ramsay Bolton. Ramsay Bolton, I remember that name. It was a fuzzy memory, but what memories of his weren't fuzzy? The ones of Dany and I in the cave. I faced him in the snow, I think. Yes, you bit off his ear. Jon seemed unfazed by that. He did worse to dissuade you from all he heard, so Theon didn't doubt mere mutilation would faze him. He abused Sansa. Best not mention his own suffering. Something almost feral flashed in Jon's eyes. At both the thought of it, as well as something out of pure instinct. Is he dead? Came the cold reply. He's dead. I killed him. They stood in silence for a moment. After everything you two have been through, Sansa is completely devoted to you. One can't imagine that either of you ever once weren't on good terms if they saw you now. Well, before all of this. Breathing in and out, Jon allowed that knowledge to temper his ferocity, to calm his heart. In a way, that does relieve me, the way I am, that there's a family out there that I belong to that truly cares. Daenerys, Sam, Aemon, Davos, Sansa, Arya, Bran, Rickon, some were just names to him, others more than that. But they all loved him in their own form. The End smiled. You're a Stark, Jon. Some didn't wish to acknowledge it, but you are? Half a Stark was Jon's reply. I don't know much, but I know that I never knew my mother or who she was. No, you didn't, Theon was forced to admit. Lord Stark knew, but he never told anyone. A particularly uncomfortable subject that was avoided as the ship began to lurch towards the harbor. Well, looks like it's the end of this. Jon, please stay safe. I don't plan on dying, just as he had told Datine. I don't think you did before either. Jon intended to snap at Theon, but he stopped. The Greyjoy's expression was soft. I tried to stop him. Diario. I was there, but I wasn't strong enough. I fought with all I had. Don't blame yourself, Jon replied. It's not your fault. You gave all you had. Nearly gave your own life as well. There isn't any more I could have asked for. He went silent. Then, his face turned from Theon. The wind howled. The scent of the sea washed over them. The man responsible is dead. I just wish I could rest. I thought I'd sleep after Daffodero. Was dead, but like everything else, slumber doesn't come easy. He shook his head, hand trembling. But even after death, he takes from me. His damn blade haunts me. Stabbed in the back. Damned coward. Slowly, Theon walked over to him, putting a hand on Jon's shoulder. I hope you find peace, Jon. You deserve it. Peace is a dream I'll never catch, Jon said. I'll be haunted for the rest of my days. I'm just looking for an end to the pain. Relief, then? Theon smirked. Aye, some damned relief would be good. Jon moved away as the harbor came closer and closer. He was the first person off the gangplank. Still aboard the ship, Theon called out to him. Be seeing you, Stark. Raising a hand, Jon replied. Goodbye, Greyjoy. Almost an hour later, Hood pulled over his head. Longclaw strapped to his hip. A horse underneath him, Jon watched the dreary town go by him. Nothing but morose small folk and the occasional column of marching unsullied. Finding a tavern, he leaned down. Excuse me, he called out to an old man in a chair by the entrance. There was a battle near here, correct. The old man gave him a sour stare, but was mollified as Jon tossed a copper star to him. Aye, about a day's ride west of here. Still can't miss it. Without even a reply, Jon urged the horse forward. Before the journey south, he had one place he needed to visit, not knowing whether it would repair his soul or shatter it all over again. It was a bracing experience. The wind against her face, the heat of her mount, the stars spread out in the sky like a twinkling mosaic. Oftentimes she never had time to savor it, but Daenerys remembered such serenity upon the great grass sea, having managed to placate Drogo. Rhaego in her womb, often she would rest upon the grass and look at the stars, enjoying the heavens. Nothing, however, could compare to the same elements while on Dragonback. It truly was the realm only gods could ever inhabit, but the Targaryens challenged such solitude, holding Drogon's spines as the vast emptiness of the sea gave way to the darker outlines of the Dornish coast. Daenerys sighed, wishing Jon was here to experience this with her. Direwolf, that he was. If anyone deserved the honor of this, it was him, my love. You were given far less than you truly deserved. The urge to burn those that wronged him. 7 hells wronged both of them often simmered in her soul, but Dottie set aside those feelings. The task at hand was too important. Turn left, my son. Fly lower. I need to see the ground. With a rumble from deep in his belly, Drogon signaled his affirmation in his own way. He lurched upward, only to bottom out in a shallow, slow dive. From a hoot in the distance, the lighter shape of Viserion followed his older brother without much fuss. "Thank you, darling," she called back to her youngest hatchling. Even the size of a large carrack, they would always be her children, the only children she'd ever have. "Oh, Rosie Agil, I wish I knew what troubles you so." Her middle hatchling was despondent for nearly a week, refusing to budge from the Dragonmont even at her and Drogon's urging. It was coincidental with Jon's departure, but Dany had no reason to believe the two connected. She asked her uncle, but he demurred with a knowing smile. It bothered her that he didn't deign to tell her, but 2 dragons were enough for this particular mission. 7 hells. She had defeated the Northmen with 1 dragon, but was unwilling to risk it now. Eyes peeled in the darkness. Dantrum found nothing. No keeps glowing brightly against the countryside. No single lights of farmhouses. Absolutely no sign of human habitation. This part of Dorne was sparsely populated, but the sheer desolation did rest uneasily with the Queen. House Targaryen hasn't endured a good history with the desolated countryside of Dorne. At one particularly black part of the mountainside on the shadow of the moon, she absent-mindedly stroked Drogon's scales, remembering the tale of Daeron, of Rhaenys, and Meraxes. Such had been tales Vadris, manically eager to imprint his hate and thirst for vengeance on his impressionable sister, never skimped on the gory, backstabbing details, making sure she knew only to trust those of the dragon, which he only claimed to be. It turned out, and here she was, flying to save Dorne from the invasion of their father's loyal bannermen after falling in love with a legitimized Stark bastard. Wherever Viserys was, that likely burned worse than the molten gold that killed him. There, just at the bottom of the darkness, spread out over the Dornish countryside, were a sprinkling of flame. Pinpricks in the black, but ones that drew Dainty's attention like a moth to a flame. Drogon landed there. A rumble in his gut, answering, the massive dragon banked down, circling the lights with Viserion close behind him. Luckily, the rocks and crags gave way to several caves large enough for the dragons to wade in. Clever Viserion. If this was evidence of her intelligence, Daenerys rather liked the new Princess of Dorne already. With Drogon landing, the dismounting Daenerys didn't have to wait long to meet her last remaining Westerosi ally. Daenerys Targaryen, stated a young woman, Daenerys' height, skin a dark olive under the torchlight of 2 swathed guards. On behalf of Dorne, I am glad to see you depart from Dragonstone and arrive in your lands. Her words were biting even in such a gracious tone. While she would never regret the time she spent with Jon, the fact that whatever initiative knocking the North and House Tully from the war was lost in the last moons did perturb Daenerys. Princess Arianne striding up to the Princess of Dorne under the watchful glare of Drogon and the just now landing Viserion, she was treated to a traditional trio of kisses upon the cheek. The march of Stannis on Highgarden was unexpected. Mistakes that will not be made again. I'd hope not, Your Grace. The two walked side by side towards the Dornish camp. Only 2 dragons, I was hoping to see 3. They are unpredictable creatures. Such was all she could say about Rhaenyra. Daenerys didn't even truly know what his mood was. But enough about them. What is the situation before us? The camp was deserted, or merely seemed so. There was much activity, if one actually looked. Hundreds of Dornish men and women coming and going with sacks of weapons and other supplies atop donkeys or their backs. We've only just reformed, Arianne explained. The Hightowers have us outnumbered on both light and heavy horse. We had to decentralize just to evade them once they crossed the Torrentine. Smart, but are they close? Arianne pointed towards the southwest. Baelor isn't making Harlan Tyrell's mistakes. Once they reach the barren ground, they confine themselves to the coast where the Red Wine Fleet can supply them. Dany frowned, trying to remember the various war stratagems Sir Barstan taught her over the years. I would have expected Baelor to attack towards the Wile. Aside from the Torrentine and regions directly around Sunspear, though much less in the latter, the far northwest of Dorne was the breadbasket of the region. Take it, and the Dornish would starve. Impressed, the princess nodded. Aye, but what our spies tell us, Dunsier has a feeling that by spies Ariane meant the whores that often followed armies around. The Hightowers think we're in these hills and they want to crush us first. Our attack would be seen as desperation of a cornered rat, which is why we want to mail a go of it. She glanced back at where the dragon slept. Now that we have an advantage, does Baelor have any scorpions with him? I do not believe so. Good. Unlike Jon, Daenerys doubted the army of the Southern Reach had the military minds needed to innovate tactics. Be a dragon. We attacked 2 days hence at midday. It was a beautiful day, one not at all ravaged by the winter that had descended upon the lands of the Seven Kingdoms. All around the birds were chirping, insects buzzing, and every variety of grassland animals that inhabited these parts, grazing upon the succulent winter grass that grew everywhere. Yet there had been a great battle here, not moons ago. Easy, boy, he told the horse, a smaller stallion a few name days old, best befitting his wish to travel without incident. Tugging lightly on the reins, Jon eased him into the fields off the main track. They passed through the knee-high grasses, ensing nothing but a few scattering rabbits and quail. Well, this is pathetic, Jon told the horse, himself, the wind. Frankly, he did not know. What he did know was that whatever he had suspected, perhaps as grand as a churned-up field burnt to a crisp and packed with rotting corpses, or as mundane as simply what could have been described as a battle, none of it was even close to true. No battlefield, just a serene prairie just as flush with life as his mind was flush with emptiness and death. Death of memory and purpose, that is. The sun hung high in the air, looming over him as it baked him with its heat. Pleasant, all things considered. After being on Dragonstone for all that time, the colder air off the seas and hard winds didn't provide Jon with much joy. Perhaps the somber snow up in the north might have been better. Perhaps he should have gone there instead, as Theon suggested. Why did I think I could ever find answers here? He was no better off than when he started. Jon's talk with Theon left him with more answers than his journey had. And yet, there, shattered and foggy as his mind was, Jon's eyes remained sharp, and thus the metallic glint was easy to spot. Reining back the horse, he quickly swung out of the saddle, landing on the grass with a dull thud. Without a word, he bent down and picked up whatever piece of metal was hidden in the tall shoots. Dust-covered and rusty, the helmet was still obvious to him. There was a large dent in it, likely from a mace or spear tip banging into it. A snarling direwolf was stamped on the front, telling Jon that this was a northern helmet, one of his own bannermen. The first chink in the serene grassland. Knowing where to look now, Jon finally came across the detritus of battle. Spear. A sword. Several arrow shafts embedded into the ground, and bones, many bones, skulls, broken and hacked off limbs. Even the whole skeleton of a horse with an arrow embedded in its skull. From the weapons he remembered Daenerys' blood riders. The arak he found close to the horse indicated that this was a Dothraki mount that fell. Northmen against Dothraki. And from the various unsullied helmets and shields he managed to find, they were part of the battle too. My bannermen against Daenerys's, we did fight. We were enemies. Did they fight personally? Jon had wanted to ask her, but always demurred. Drawing Longclaw, he closed his eyes, working through various strikes and parries, trying to see if he could jog his memory. It worked, to an extent. Blood. Steel. Death. Get to it, King Crow. Before we all die. The source of that voice going limp in his arms. Head throbbing, Jon's eyes flew open. He sucked in a breath at the rather strong memories. If he concentrated, he could almost smell the stench of death. Hand pressing against his heart, he willed himself to calm down before going back on his hunt. The grass around here seemed duller than the majority of the field, mixed in with loose, dirty laying on the surface, like the green would never return. Likely because of the dragon fire, he assumed. Carriage-wide lanes of the grass were discolored. Outside of where the fire burned appeared trampled to the point of uprooting seeds. The closer Jon was to the ground, the more he picked out the details missing in the big picture. As much as life had returned to the fields, the scars of battle still appeared, remnants of the cataclysm that had befallen here. Not completely. He blinked. Thousands died, but not as many as there could have been. Not nearly as many. She could have burned them all, me included. But she didn't. The woman in front of him only days before, the one that felt so small and soft in his arms as they kissed, to anyone else. There may have been a sharp dissonance between that young girl and the conquering dragon queen that rode her beasts into battle. To Jon, he couldn't help but feel that perhaps there was less of a division between the two personas. That the small, passionate young woman was who she truly was. Though she had used Drogon on that fateful day, she had the capacity for great violence if need be, as any might if they had control over massive fire-breathing dragons. Head throbbing, he continued to push through the grass, eyes peeled for more debris from the carnage. Trudging along the dusty grass, Jon stepped through a thicket of bushes. A flock of birds dashed off into the air, startling him for a moment. "Seven hells," he muttered, pushing aside the thick brush until he came upon something that truly drew his attention. A circle that marred the ground. Dull as the fire lanes were, this was even worse. The soil was purely blackened, as if the fire had erupted at point-blank range, to which Jon knew exactly the thing that caused it. What else could have been? Perhaps wildfire. But then Cersei would have had to trudge the volatile substance all the way from King's Landing to here. No, only Drogon could do this. Jon walked right up to the scorched ground, soil and sand almost crystallized into glass below him. Kneeling upon the ground, the lack of even a single track mark seemed to show the local fauna avoided the place like the spring sickness. I know what happened here," he said aloud, running a hand along the crystallized soil. Something catching his eye. A partially melted iron ring, the trout sigil of House Tully still visible even covered in grime and ash. He surmised this separate blackened circle on its lonesome must have been where the Blackfish met Drogon. There was little left of the man that once stood there. The grass hadn't returned, much like the other spots in the meadow that saw fire from Drogon on that day. The dragon fire melted down the man. Clearly, Jon found no remains, reduced to ash. Brynden was blown away in the wind. "You are the best of us, Stark." Jon blinked, the flash being rather vivid. He shot to his feet, head snapping behind him as someone stood there, whispering to him. His pulse quickened mightily, jumping out his chest. No longer a pounding throb, but this time he nearly doubled over, shards stabbing through his flesh and bone. Skull, chest, legs, arms, they all were affected. In spite of himself, a scream rang through the air. The pain was simply unbearable. "Fight like hell and see if you can make something out of all this shit." There he was on the ground, the flashes bombarding Jon as steel-tipped arrows fired directly at him. Teeth gritted. He fought from screaming again. Fought to keep his composure, until a single word in his mind played. Dracarys, and with it so did his pain disappear, leaving a shaking man drenched in his own sudden sweat. As rapidly gone as it had arrived, the greatest agony since he had first awoken from his death. Dracarys, Jon repeated from the memory. A Valyrian word, one that even he recognized. Fire, burn, ignite. A command to the dragons. The command that resulted in the Targaryen conquest, in the dance. In Daenerys, Targaryens rise from obscurity and slavery into contention for the Iron Throne. The command that left him near death on this very field. Trudging up a small hill, the flashes continued to plague Jon. A dragon, Drogon. Waiting behind the form of Daenerys, she was beautiful as ever, but clad in a dark leather battle dress, face not showing the warmth and love he so fondly remembered. It was dark, powerful, fierce, the dragon of House Targaryen, fire and blood. Making his way to the summit, Jon fell to his knees. This was where she stood and watched the men, his men, rounded up and made to kneel. Naharis was there, as was Tyrion, Grey Worm. Such was Fuzzy, but he remembered Dany. Oh, did he remember Dany? "Daenerys," he murmured. "Why?" But Jon knew why. His feelings swirled around his body, unable to decipher anything worth a damn. Everything he was told was true. Dany had burned his army, the Blackfish. Not that his death weighed heavily on him. It didn't. He barely remembered the man, much less what he meant to him. Though when he really racked his brain about it, Jon felt himself grieve. The man had vaporized before his own eyes, after all along with thousands of other nameless faces that followed him. He was the White Wolf. The Wrath of the North, a man with an unbroken string of victories from Castle Black to Harrenhal, and he had failed them all. And then there was Daenerys. Did her boots tread over where my knees are? Was this where she gave the command to burn the blackfish, to have Nakius bring him forward? The little shit. Dainty hadn't been deceptive, though. She as much as admitted it to him that they had fought as enemies. And in a sense, he was glad she refused to lie to him or manipulate him. It would have been so easy to, but she refrained. She cared for him to the point where she would let him discover such a horrible secret. Funny, if the roles had been reversed, Jon wasn't sure what he'd do. Take cover! He felt the white-hot inferno bathe him in heat. Massive black shape shooting past as the jet of flame incinerated a hole in his lines. Jon nearly pitched back, rushing to clutch his head as the memories kept coming. Pounded at his skull, a roaring winter's gale, turning his mind to madness and screaming white noise into his hearing. Gritting his teeth, Jon fought his own cries of pain, visions beginning to overcome him. Blood, screams, rage, fire, ash. All of a sudden the field before him disappeared, replaced with a slaughterhouse of death, greasy black pyres that extended high into the sky, the stench reeking of pitch and cooked flesh. His men, a roar so loud it shook the very ground, a shadow so massive that it blocked out the sun. Balerion, the Black Dread, reborn. Keep calm, men. It's over. I would have been honored to die by your side, King Crow. There's no honor in death. At least now we live to fight another day. Alive! Undoubtedly many lived, though himself but a cursed life of agony, of shattered minds and a purposeless drive, and love. Love for a woman that comforted him, stood behind him in his fight for justice, gave him a refuge from the pain and agony that was Jon Stark's existence at the very moment. The same woman that burned his men burned them alive in her quest to win. No parley, no offer of surrender, no chivalry, just fire. Fire and blood. Dragons don't plant trees, Jon murmured, an ancient saying just appearing in his head as if by magic. Daenerys? Why? These shards of glass and metal drove him to sheer torture more than even the memories burning through his mind. Consolidating the woman he fell for to the woman that rode Drogon onto this field moons before. It seemed impossible. Why did you do this? And yet perhaps he knew... Her monster. She's a monster. Monsters burn men alive. But to what end? Mad King Aerys, Jon thought out loud. Far gone, only able to make his subjects cower by burning them alive. He knew the stories, remembered them even as his memories disappeared into the cold abyss. That was a monster. Ramsay Bolton, who raped his sister, he was a monster. Walder Frey, who butchered the wife and child of the brother Jon no longer remembered and broke guest right in the process. He was a monster. Cersei Lannister, a monster. Dario Naharis, a monster. The army of the dead, monsters all. Daenerys Targaryen, monster, perhaps, and yet the thought that filled his battered mind, unbidden, made him tremble. Jon Stark. Jon Snow. Monster. Sam told him of his exploits. Davos, Aemon, all regaled him of how he fought as a brother of the Night's Watch and Lord of Winterfell, killing Kilwarren half-hand, leading to the death of his first love, butchering Walder Frey without honor. The bloody pile of meat that used to be Dario Naharis wasn't a struggle to be remembered. He did that, he did it all. So was he a monster as the others, as he had thought Daenerys was vile and irredeemable? Jon didn't know. He couldn't be sure at all. Daenerys burned thousands with dragonfire. This battle likely wasn't the first time she'd used her dragons on people either. She cared for him with no gain for her, gave him justice and love. He tore apart men with the deepest anger and hate. He saved his sisters and brother from a fate worse than death. Monsters yet not monsters, face falling into his palms, Jon trembled at the weight of it all. Unsure of anything anymore, faced with the truth about even himself. Kill the boy, Jon Stark. Everything about this, something gnawed at his mind, at his heart. A lesson worth knowing. A lesson that needed to be learned. Something that would finally rip apart the confusion and chaos that his soul had become, only laying just out of reach, beyond his grasp. Kill the boy and let the man be born. What do you want from me? Jon snarled into the empty field. I fought for Stannis and nearly died. I softened to Daenerys and became a husk. Now He hadn't admitted it aloud. He was too afraid, too. Afraid of something like this. Mayhaps I love her. Jon murmured he wanted her. That was for damn sure. Desired her greatly. Needed her. But love? Regardless of what the depths of his feelings were, the current circumstances made it all up in the air. I've come to care for her, only to find out we're both monsters. Was this the ultimate fate for him? The curse of the gods upon a bastard that rose above his station? Stannis Baratheon lost his hand, Daemon Blackfyre lost his life, Ramsay Bolton died an unspeakably brutal death. Was this his punishment for his father's sin? A broken mind, eternally to live in agony for the rest of time? In comparison, Daemon Blackfyre's fate of his half-brother's arrow in the throat looked pretty appealing. Then, strangely, several rabbits and a deer took that moment to scramble through the grass, running like their lives depended on it. Jon didn't need to wait long to know why. A large wolf emerged from the tall grass, its fur a dark gray, as it loped forward. A dire wolf. No, far too small for that, Jon instinctively knew. And yet quite a coincidence given the sigil emblazoned on his gorget. Stopping, the wolf looked up at Jon, red eyes seeming to glow as they bore into his very soul even. Jon didn't say anything, merely staring back. In an instant, the wolf threw its head back and howled into the air. A light melody, almost musical, before it bolted back into the grass, disappearing from his sight. His eyes scanned over the battlefield in its entirety. Seemed much of the ground and grassy areas had been damaged seemingly permanently. The vastness of blood and fire that this land saw that day was inconceivable. Despite seeing the wolf and other animals, the environment hadn't returned to the original life it might have seen before he and Daenerys battled. Typical wildlife sounds such as birds chirping, woodpeckers, or various bugs and the like, non-existent. It was almost as if the animals thought this land to be cursed. The damage done to it made it uninhabitable. Perhaps he was wrong. Perhaps the animals were beginning to learn that things damaged aren't to be cast aside or ignored. Some things might be able to be repaired. Return to some sense of normalcy. Of course, never to be exactly the same ever again. Yet, it can come back from the seemingly eternal wounds because they were never eternal in the first place. Healing might be possible. It's just not easy, and it will take some time. As this revelation rolled through Jon's head, he began to think of his own self. Much like him, the field was exactly like his own mind. In some ways, recovery began. Certain things began to regrow and reappear. As some of the grasses did, at least those that were not ravished by Drogon's fire. Those places were damaged, maybe forever. Just like fractions of Jon's mind and memories. In many ways, since Dario's blade pierced his flesh, he'll never be the same. Some things about him will never return to the way they were. Others perhaps changed forever. I doubt anything in my life was ever easy. He bore the scars to prove it, not just the ones of his death. Wordlessly, he remounted his horse, lips pressed into a thin line. One last look at the battlefield where Daenerys captured him. It was still a haze punctuated with vivid snapshots, but the truth of everything burned in his mind like a brand. Jon sighed, turning away and leading the horse back to the road. The past did nothing for him beyond providing answers. Destiny lied in the future. In moving forward, no matter what fate brought. Regardless, his journey to Duskendale had been essential. His mind clearer and his senses were sharper. Maybe even breathe a little easier. Problem was, there existed more for him to discover. Why'd this battle even happen in the first place? He'd heard some rough details from Sam, but he didn't know the full story. He and Dancy didn't dare speak of that day together, at least not after they came back. Not at length. He got just she didn't want to bring it back up. After seeing the battlefield. He didn't blame her. His feelings with her felt shaken up as he rode away. Their relationship should be a mainstay. Might still be, but he just didn't know what she was capable of. Now he did. They'll surely have plenty to speak of when he sees her again. Whenever that happens, this journey might be a long one. He certainly wasn't angry with her, but his feelings got mixed up. Confusion filled his mind more than ever, but for the first time since coming back, his mind felt a little bit clearer. Unbound by trauma. Perchance because he faced the horrors head-on. It may be because he located a newfound inner strength and mental fortitude. Either way, for the first time, he felt absolved from Dario's blade. So, he just might have to see where it all started. Or at least someone who can fill in the blanks. If only he didn't have to venture so far south, places he's never seen before. The last thing Jon ever wanted was more mysteries. Right this way, Lord Hand. Hayford Castle had been the last of Cersei Lannister's possessions outside the walls of King's Landing to fall to Stannis' juggernaut. But fall it had. From what Davos had seen outside the walls, whatever siege that occurred there had been at most one dodgy fortnight, ended without incident, and the Baratheons invited in, one step closer to defeating the usurper Lioness. Seer Edric Storm. Every inch his father's son banged hard on the door, opening it a moment later. Your Grace, Lord Hand Davos has returned. He bowed respectfully before allowing Davos entry to the solar-turned war room of Lord Hayford. Hunched over a large map, Stannis' dour expression softened considerably at seeing his hand. After so long. Lord Davos, he said, my right hand has returned to me. With a grin, Davos moved to kneel, but instead found Stannis clasping his hand, to which he shook, a gesture of the most profound respect well earned by the former smuggler. Forgive me, Your Grace. I was sidetracked a bit at the end. Stannis waved him off. Doesn't matter. You're here and at just the right time. He gestured to the map. We're on the cusp of my final victory over my brother's whore of a wife. There was a tinge to Stannis' voice, something akin to viciousness, but Davos knew just how vile Cersei was and didn't begrudge his king for such feelings. Happy to assist in my duties, Your Grace. Something came to mind, a solemn frown passing over his face. My sincerest apologies for the death. No, Davos. We have more pressing business, the king snapped, tensing up. No talking of it. Quiet, chastised by a king he figured was still grieving. Davos settled at Stannis' right, looking over the three other figures in the room. Randyll Tarley and Harry Strickland didn't surprise him, for both were seasoned military commanders and, with Jon gone, the best choices to lead the armies. But to Stannis' left side was pettier Baelish, the slimy lord from God's knows where. I'll have to keep an eye on him. All right, Randyll stated, picking off where he left off. Cersei Lannister has lost all allies that aren't within the city. House Hayford has declared for us, while Rosie and Stokeworth declared for the Dragon Queen 1 week ago. I'll deal with them after I take the Iron Throne, Stannis growled. What of the Westerlands lords? Baelish. Littlefinger's smile made Davos' gooseflesh rise. Morale is low. That is unfortunate for Cersei, but they will not break from her unless you breach the defenses and look unstoppable. No, the true foe isn't them. It's the wildfire. Stannis stiffened, as did Davos. What of it? Anyone who had lived through the Battle of Blackwater Bay remembered the wildfire. Images of Davos' lost sons flashed before his mind, making his heart clench. They have more, a lot more. However, my spies know where they are keeping most of it. Perhaps our men can sneak into the capital and disarm the caches. Harry Strickland commented, puffing a strand of dirty blonde hair from his forehead. Cersei is allowing many refugees into the city as more human shields to ward off the Dragon Queen. They could infiltrate that way. He speaks of a good idea, Your Grace, Davos commented, hardened when Stannis nodded. I shall reflect on it. Dismissed. With another wave of his hands, Stannis sent them away. Baelish, not you. I need words. Davos blinked, surprised. Would you like me to... No, go rest, Lord Davos. You must be tired. Littlefinger's counsel, I do not believe this is a good development. Walking down the hallways, Davos nevertheless put it from his mind for the moment, eager to see another person he had been separated from. Exhausted and frustrated as he was, Davos rapped gingerly on the door. Princess, he said softly. May I enter? After a moment, the ironwood door creaked open just wide enough for him to slide through. In an instant, a short figure had her arms wrapped tightly around his torso. Sero Davos. Thank the gods you're back. A happy chuckle leaving his lips. Davos hugged Shireen back. I'm glad to be back. The princess pulled back with a sparkle in her eyes, and Davos managed to get a good look at her. 7 hells! You've grown into a beautiful young woman. That only seemed to make her smile widen. It was true. In the moons that Davos had been absent, it was as if the sweet, kindly child had transformed into a comely young lady. All childhood chubbiness in her cheeks melted away, leaving shapely cheekbones framed by lustrous brown hair. A dress of the Baratheon house colors, black and yellow, did little to hide a womanly figure starting to develop. Apart from the cracked scars of her childhood grayscale below the piercing blue eyes, There were few alive that could compare with her beauty. But even with her delight at his return, Davos could sense a deep solemnness that overwhelmed the Baratheon princess. Stress and horrors that no child should endure, especially someone as pure as Shireen. "What's wrong, princess?" Her smile faltered, Davos being able to read her better than even her parents. "Your mother." Shireen bit her lip, looking away. "It's my fault. She's dead." "Of course it's not, my child." Davos shushed her, holding her close to his chest. "It's not your fault." "But it is." She let her head fall against the wall, as if in shame. Her shoulders trembled. "If I hadn't spoken—" "You mustn't speak that way, dear." Davos placed a hand on her shoulder. "It can lead to very dangerous places, physically and emotionally." He heard a soft sob, and it broke his heart, only for Shireen to launch herself back into his arms, desperate for his fatherly affection. It surprised him. "Am I the only one who's comforted her after it happened?" "It's all right, my dear. After a loss like this, it's all right to let out your sorrow." "I know," she murmured against his gambeson. "It's just what you said about the dangerous places." Shireen tried to compose herself. "It half worked. Most around here wouldn't mind if I stayed in such a place." He furrowed his brows. "What are you talking about?" "They all blame me, Davos. I haven't a friend in the world anymore. Even the servants." "That can't be true." She looked up at him, red-rimmed eyes, nevertheless firm in her statement. "They do, Sir Davos. I can hear their whispers, their insults. I mean, Mother was never well regarded, but—" She trailed off. Children were quite perceptive. Davos wasn't shocked that she could pick up on the subtext and demeanor of the adults around her. "I'll have to speak with the servants and anyone else that spreads such vile words around." "It will be difficult," Shireen replied with resignation, "since His Grace my father is the source of such vile words as you say." Pulling back, Davos' expression took a surprising form before he pursed his lips, pensively. "I am certain that His Grace doesn't speak of you in any tone but affection and reverence." For decades he had seen Stannis through all the doldrums of his marriage and stillborn sons, watched Saxhley's descend into hysteria and the king bear it all in a quiet stoicism. While it was obvious that those stillbirths weighed deeply on him, the one living child of Stannis Baratheon was worth everything to the king, perhaps more than even the Iron Throne. But apparently Shireen didn't believe that about her father anymore. "Sir Davos, you have to believe me about this, to trust me. You are a smart girl, princess, but this goes against everything I know of your royal father." Running a hand through her brown locks, Shireen looked a mix of frustrated and frantic. "It's not just from my mother's demise," she choked back another sob. "Your leaving has been the worst thing that ever happened." He's descended further into his visions, his so-called destiny. No longer does he even require the Red Woman to conduct his fire rituals or prophecies for him. "Princess, I don't think I fully understand." "Sir Davos, my father is not the man you think you follow. Not anymore. He's not a loving man anymore. Not that he was ever affectionate. But he keeps me away. Make sure I stay in this room. Servants bring me old bread and dry meat. I'm a prisoner." Davos felt aghast. Yet he pointed a thumb at the door. "There were no guards at the door. It wasn't locked. There didn't be locks if I'm too scared to leave." "Has something happened to you, princess?" "Sir Davos." "Princess, please tell me." "My father, he doesn't feel like who my father once was," she said. "He's angry with me. All the time." "In what way?" "He yells at me," Shireen whispered. "Not often, but I've never seen a viciousness in him when it does happen. I know he blames me for my mother's death." "How could he? What happened to your mother had nothing to do with you." "I don't know, Sir Davos, but I know he does," Shireen said, her eyes lowered. "It didn't take a learned man to decipher that this poor child was suffering over this. Her father had done nothing to ease her pain either, which frustrated Davos because he really started to wonder what sort of man Stannis had become. Nothing he'd recently heard or seen of the Stag King reminded him of the man he chose to follow all those years ago. "Princess, Davos found himself at a loss for words, while also being a bit impressed with Shireen's fortitude. Even though she had no reason to lie, registering the reality of it became difficult for him. What all had happened to Stannis for him to act this way towards his only child? Sure, Davos factored in the loss of Stannis. Yet this was such a departure from the stag's normal behavior, reminded him none of the man he loved to follow. His instincts told him to investigate further. Sometime later, Davos went back to find Stannis. He really needed some concrete answers on what had been going on. No one better to give them than Stannis. He found his way back to Stannis' chambers. The two guards out front stepped in front of him. Davos frowned, then tapped his finger on his hand of the kingpin. "Do move aside, gents. Need to speak with the king." His Grace said he didn't want to be bothered, one of them said. "I am his hand. I should be allowed in." The two guards exchanged a puzzled look. They didn't move. "I think not, Sir Davos." Davos shook his head, then raised his voice. "Your Grace, may I enter?" After a few moments, a voice from inside answered, "Sir Davos, of course. Come in." Chuckling, Davos watched the guards step aside. He went through the door with ease. Stannis was in almost the exact same position as earlier in the day when he arrived, eyes scanning endlessly over his map of the greater area. Stannis circled the map to move closer to Davos. "Sir Davos, it is good to see you again. I've sorely missed your counsel. I'm glad to be back, Your Grace." "You did well to secure the Golden Company," Stannis nodded his head, glancing back to the map. "Their numbers are a welcome addition. We dwarf anything Cersei has." "Good to hear." Stannis seemed to peer behind Davos like someone stood there. "I have noticed Lady Melisandre isn't with you." "Yes," Davos said. "She wished to return to Volantis after... well, I suppose it's a long story." "Volantis?" "Yes, she seemed like she had an urgent business," Davos replied. "I advised her otherwise." Stannis was dismissive. "It's no matter. I don't need her. The Lord of Light shines his sun on me regardless. I will have victory. I am certain of it this time. I see my own visions in the flames. I perform the words she used to say." "Oh, I see. As glad as I am to see you, Sir Davos, I grow tired. Is there a specific reason for your visit?" "I had hoped to tell you about my journey. I have some important things to tell you." "Yes, but you said it's a long story. I suspect it's quite the tale. Perhaps we share some ale while you tell me of it on the morrow. That is after we've gone over all our plans for the upcoming battle." "That sounds lovely." Davos did like hearing a flash of the man he used to know. Perhaps he had nothing to worry about. "Great, well, I'm sorry, Your Grace, there's something else." Stannis did sigh. "What is it?" "Shireen. I'm worried about her." "Oh, that's what this is about?" "She's fine." "I'm not too sure," Davos said. "Her soul felt heavy to me." "Don't bother yourself with her," Stannis said, turning his body back to the map. "Your Grace, you don't resent her, do you? For what happened to Saxley's?" In a quick motion, Stannis' head snapped toward Davos. "What? Resent her? The poor child thinks you blame her. Why would she think that?" Stannis turned fully to him. "I'm not sure, Your Grace. That's why I came to speak to you. She's just scared. A bit paranoid, perhaps. Thinking everyone speaks poorly of her." The stag frowned. "That's not true. At least not I know of. I'd certainly stop that dead in its tracks if it took place." "I'm so glad to hear, but," Stannis cut in, holding his hand up, "there is a flip side to this. Shireen ought to learn how harsh this world is. Her mother is gone. There is no one left to coddle her. I certainly won't. I don't have the energy to, even if I wanted to. I don't understand. Why not treat her with the utmost respect? She is your heir." Stannis' brow furrowed. "Yes. Well, it's time she starts acting like it. Hard truths are what she needs now." "She's but a girl. Sir Davos, if I wanted your advice on how to raise my daughter, I'd ask you. Understand?" "I don't need your input on this," Stannis said, sternly. "She'll do her part, but I won't treat her as some..." Clearly, he couldn't find the word, and that frustrated him. He scowled. "She'll have to learn some respect at some point. She respects you, Your Grace. More than anyone." That didn't stop her from speaking out of turn, did it? "Your Grace. If she stays where she is and does as I say, there'll be no issues. If she strays, that's when there will be trouble." Davos had more to say, but Stannis turned back away from him, facing the map. Stannis didn't seem like he wanted to hear anything else on the matter. He wasn't sure what to think about what he'd heard. He did know that Stannis' mind had been altered, whether that was from time or Littlefinger whispering in his ear. Davos didn't know. He bowed. "Your Grace." Then left the room as quietly as he could, many thoughts swirling through his head. Exasperated to the extreme, the hound resisted the urge to punch one of the trees. "You're the one who lost all the damned food," Sandor yelled. "There was a bear," Arya growled. I'd rather go hungry than get mauled. Sandor muttered some words. Arya didn't hear. He kicked some dirt around and scanned through the wreckage, though he exclaimed suddenly and reached into a torn, open bag. He pulled out one of his flagons, rubbing his hand over it, searching for holes or leaks. When he found none, he exhaled heavily out of relief. Fuck you, bear, but I'm glad you didn't take my wine. Arya shook her head and he knocked flagon back high up in the air. Wish the damned bear had. During the day, Sandor grumbled something under his breath and walked away from their camp. Given he carried his wine flag and began undoing his belt, Yak guessed he was going somewhere to squat, which happens every so often. So she thought nothing of it. That is, until she heard some rustling in the brush directly behind her. Her hand went to needle immediately, expecting a pair of raiders to come running at her. Unfortunately, it was much worse. A giant brown bear waded out into the open, likely coming for the rabbit they had roasting over their campfire. Eruzier did the sensible thing and climbed the nearest tree as fast as she could. 3 tinier cubs appeared behind the large bear. She watched helplessly as the mother bear ravaged their camp and ate most of their food. She couldn't help but laugh at the impossibility of the situation. At some point, Sandor came back from his deposit, though the bears were still lingering. Arya heard him curse. Below her, fucking hell. Clearly having seen what was going on, she peered down at him and waved sarcastically. What the fuck are you doing? Waiting, she said. Sandor ducked further behind the tree as to not be noticed. Fuck off. They'll eat all our shit. Try to stop them if you'd like. After making a right mess of their camp, the mother bear finally got disinterested. She wandered away, cubs close behind. Oh, fuck off, girl, Sandor scowled, taking big gulps from his flagon. Stomach rumbling, he groaned and took a seat on the ground near their ragged tent. Well, I can't expect much from a little girl. Lips curling into a frown, Arya stared daggers at her erstwhile partner. I could kill you in an instant if I wanted to. Sure, you got some fancy moves since Yaxley looked exactly like a skinny boy rather than just mostly like a skinny boy. Couldn't stop a bear now, could it? He shook his head. How else do you expect you'll take on my brother? Rhea scoffed. Why did I want to bring you along again? Because people need killing. You can't do it all. He cracked his knuckles. We're out of food, kid, Sandor told her. Found those chickens on that abandoned farm, and now some bear is eating my fucking dinner thanks to you. Do you always think with your stomach? He huffed. Keeps me the most satisfied. So what? You want to waltz in there and kill everyone, take their food? Do you have a better idea? We have to eat. Picking up her rucksack, Arya slung it over her shoulder. Well, can't do anything over here? May as well get on with it and see if there's an inn somewhere. I still have 2 silver stags. Got 'em hidden, 'cause I haven't seen any. You don't want to know? Peering down at Arya, the hound snorted. You're right, I don't want to fucking know. Arya smirked to herself. It was about a mile down the King's Road where their solitude seemed to end. Dozens of others crowded the wide road through the forests of the Crownlands. Men, women, and children of all walks and kingdoms, plodding in carriages, horses, or on foot towards the largest city on the continent. Winter was coming, and one step ahead of starvation at the hands of the elements, or King Stannis' war taxes, only gave these people the promise of hope under the reign of Queen Cersei. Arya wanted to tell them how foolish they were, but such was only a passing fancy. Everything she experienced told her it wasn't worth calling attention to oneself. But as was wont to her, sometimes attention came to her without fault. Raiders! The hue and cry raced through the throngs of refugees rather quickly. Before either her or the hound could truly react and their reflexes were like lightning, the crowd descended into panic. Some tried to flee and were cut down by the charging light cavalry sporting the flaming stag of Stannis Baratheon. Most clustered close together like a herd of elk or flock of sheep. Going for her dagger, she was stopped by a shake of the hound's head. Not worth it or safe. Arya dropped her hand, eyes peeled and waiting for the right moment. Unlike before, when she was but a tiny girl pretending to be a boy under Yoren's care, Arya would not be afraid or defenseless. Trotting forward on a large stallion was a grizzled knight, draped in plate and mail, with a Stormland-style conical helmet atop his head. Taking the van of the circle of horse hemming the refugees in, he eyed them all with disinterest. Greetings, I'm Sir Colin Greenpools, the sworn sword of Stannis Baratheon. First of his name, rightful king of the Andals, Rhynar, and first men, who leads this procession. There was a silence, but eventually an able-bodied man with a wiry frame and calloused hands stepped forward. Micah Tanner! Good sir. I suppose I am. Satyr Colin looked at him with disdain. Very well, I'll say this to you. This entire group is committing treason by advancing towards the control of the Lannister whore. Pledge yourself to King Stannis, and your lives will be spared. We'll pledge to anyone, good sir, but we're just heading to King's Landing for food and shelter. Winter's coming after all. We want food, screamed someone in the crowd. King Stannis provides sustenance to all of his subjects, Colin stated. Lies. His men took all me grain. Stannis is a burner. Who said that? Cullen drew his sword. Hand him to me or I'll kill your leader. Arya then moved for her knife, and the hound didn't stop her. But for once it wasn't she that struck the first blow, as an arrow shot out from the trees and slammed straight through Colin's armor. With a grunt and a gurgle, he fell off his horse into a bloody heap on the ground. Arya and Sandor didn't waste time. Crouching, they drew their weapons. It was quiet but hit like a thunderclap. Both Baratheon and small folk looked around, milling about, confused as ever. Another arrow took down a horseman, then another wounding one in the shoulder. Such was a collective jolt of alarm. Raider. Before Arya could blink an eye, the entire forest clearing around the King's Road descended into something akin to a winter's blizzard of attacking men and whizzing arrows. From the western canopy and underbrush emerged what had to be 36 raiders, lightly armored and without a care as to who they killed, being combatant or civilian. The enemy of my enemy is my enemy still. If that wasn't a lesson of Arya's life, she didn't know what was. Apparently the Hound had a similar idea. Bashing a raider in the face, he screamed at Arya. Fight your way south. I'll follow you. But only moments later, a sword nearly knocked him off balance, forcing him to skid to a halt and draw his axe. Wait a minute, you're that cunt from the Blackwater! Brun squinted his eyes to make sure he wasn't seeing things. Unfortunately, he wasn't. Fuck me. It's the Hound. What a big fucker. I prayed I'd never see your ugly mug ever again. You should have prayed harder. Huh, never thought about that, Bronn shrugged. Much less actually praying. Spinning his sword, Bronn slashed at the Hound, who blocked it with the handle of his axe. Such a weapon was ill-advised in an actual clash, Bronn knocking it away within seconds. You're getting sloppy. With an agility of a fall smaller man, the Hound sprang back and escaped a swing, catching a glint of steel on the grass and diving for it. When Bronn lunged, Sandor rolled on his back. He caught the blow with the greatsword, now clutched in one hand. Now who's fucking sloppy? With a snarl, he shoved Bronn back, leaping to his feet. I saved you, you know, at the Battle of Blackwater. Maybe I should have let the man on fire get you, Bronn shrugged. Spitting on the ground, Sandor cracked his neck. Which man on fire? I've fought too fucking many. He snarled and charged, thrusting straight at the former sellsword's neck, only for Bronn to sidestep the attack and parry away the greatsword. The one that made you tuck your tail between your legs like a sissy girl. Racing along the ground in a crouch, Erzia leapt from the grass and grabbed onto a horseman, whichever side, it didn't matter. Her hand grabbed a strap of armor plate, distracting her foe enough with a pure surprise for her to sink the dagger deep into his neck, blood spurting out, death overtaking him. Erzia dropped to the ground, smacking the horse on the rear and sending it galloping madly into throngs of people, creating the most chaos as she could. Now if only she could find Sandor, they could both get out of there. Sword swinging over his head, the flash of a charging beast forced Sandor back, leaping out of the way just in time to escape the horse, corpse hanging limply in the saddle. Bronn wasn't as lucky. A glancing blow staggering him and forcing his sword to the ground. With Bronn's sword cast aside, Sandor pounded a few blows to his face. The sellsword tried to retreat, but he had nowhere to go. Sandor stayed on the offensive. Bronn managed to dodge a blow, then deliver a body blow. But given Sandor heavy chainmail, the punch hurt him more than anything. He backed up, hissing and shaking his wrist. Bronn retreated to the outskirts of the skirmish, where little action went on. The meat of the fight lay behind them a bit. Only a few bodies here and there where Bronn went. The Hound belly laughed. You fucking pussy. He kept pressing on towards Bronn, who started to look somewhat scared. He stumbled over a dead body, given he wasn't watching where he was going. eyes locked on Sandor as he backed up. He fell on his back with a thud, dust filling the air. It blurred Sandor's vision, so much so that he didn't see the helmet flying into his face. Bronn must have grabbed it off of the guy he fell over. It split Sandor's lip and gave him a nosebleed. "Fucking cunt," he exclaimed. He powered through the dust cloud to find Bronn still on his back, crawling, managing to grab him by the ankle. He twisted Bronn over onto his chest. Bronn grabbed fistfuls of dirt, trying to pull himself away, but Sandor held on tight. Adversely, Bronn got pulled in closer. Raising high, Sandor brought his boot down over Bronn's back a few times, grinding him into the dirt, cracking ribs, then grabbing his back to slam him against the ground over and over again. Sandor backed up and beckoned to him. "Come on, get up, if you can." Bronn huffed through bloody teeth. "Oh, fuck off. You must want me to crack your fucking head open." "Be better than listening to you talk," Bronn replied, then managed to get to his feet. But before he could even get his hands up, Sandor buried his fist in his face. He fell all the way to his knees. His right eye felt like it caved in. Staying on him, Sandor grabbed him around the neck, wringing him around like he weighed nothing. Any air Bronn had in his lungs evaporated, only to be thrown back down, cast against the dirt. Taking a few steps back, Sandor crossed his arms. "I was wrong. You're not just like me." But at least I got a few good fucks in." "The cheapest whore wouldn't touch you," Bronn said slowly. A fit of laughter kicked in, short-lived though, as it clearly hurt him to do so. That proved to not be a wise idea, as the hound lifted him by his neck, burly hands slowly choking him. "Nothing to say now, huh?" His grip tightened. "Don't kill him," a voice called out from behind them. "Arya!" She scampered up closer. The skirmish had died down significantly. The Baratheons had killed most of the raiders, started taking prisoners. The three of them were far enough away, most likely wouldn't be bothered as long as they weren't too loud. "Why not?" the hound asked. "Just another one of Cersei's dogs." "Put him down." Sandor sighed but tossed Bronn into the air. Falling down with a thick bounce, Bronn coughed out. His chest raised and fell slowly. Windpipe halfway closed from Sandor's grip. Would have closed entirely had it not been for Arya speaking up. Said girl leaned over Bronn, hair crowding her calm countenance. "Can you walk?" There was a subtle nod from the sellsword, but she doubted his integrity. His body was in shambles. She looked to Sandor. "Are any of the others still alive?" The hound shrugged and spat bloody spit onto the dirt. He turned around and scanned the bodies strewn around. Most were unmoving, but one Lannister seemed to twitch every few seconds. Sandor trounced over and grabbed the man by his collar. The poor man started to wail and flail, but couldn't stop what was happening. Sandor drug him over nearby, where Bronn lay. Arya hung over him next and asked the same question given to Bronn. "Can you walk?" The Lannister had a black eye and his nose was crushed. Other than that, he seemed fine. He gasped and snorted a bloody chunk from his nostril. Yet he said, "Yes." Rosio rose straight, hands behind her back. "Excellent. What's the fucking plan here?" Sandor wanted to know. "Just kill 'em both. Fuck 'em." "I appreciate your enthusiasm for killing Lannister men, but I have an idea," Arya said, strangely giddy. Then looked down over Bronn. "Can you hear me?" Another nod. "Good. I want you to deliver a message to Cersei." "Why don't you tell it to the damned one who can speak?" Sandor scoffed, nodding his head at the one he dragged over, then patted himself down, searching for his wine flagon. "Because it'll mean more coming from this one," Arya sighed, still staring at Bronn. "You make sure Cersei hears this. The North remembers. You got that? Repeat it back to me." The sellsword took a few moments, but he uttered slowly, "The North remembers." "Good boy," Arya smirked. She pointed a girl at the live one. "You make sure he makes back to Cersei, or I'll find you and cut your balls off." As fast as he could, the Lannister man got to his feet. Bronn rolled over onto his chest, then leaned onto the man as he got help to his feet. Arya stared at them as they moved off. "Why in fuck's name would we want Cersei to know we're coming?" Sandor said, scowling. "What does she truly know? She doesn't know the two of us are coming. Not specifically, at least. It won't change anything other than make her look over her shoulder. And there's wrong with that. I want her to know she's in boiling water, and her days are numbered. She's not scared of you. We saw the army Stannis has. She'd be dumbfucked to be more scared of anything than that," Sandor said, still looking for his flagon. Trust me, she'll be scared. She should be. My father didn't scare Cersei, and it ended in his betrayal and death. She would honor him, but not make his mistake. Nobody gets away with anything, especially if I have anything to do with it. We'll see, Sandor huffed. They're not waiting, Edric told his lover, palm held over his eyes to block out the sun as he peered out over the parapet. Neither infantry nor cavalry. Ariane's eyes narrowed, the voluptuous beauty having ditched her rather revealing. Seductive dresses that made her renowned all over Westeros in favor of the same leather and cotton that her cousins Obara and Nymeria favored, or at least ones they had favored before they were butchered by the Ironborn. Baelor is smart, attacking while the sun is in our eyes and before it can bring warmth to the ground. Daemon Sand nodded, the commander of the Dornish Right conferring with his princess, before heading back to his forces. Full armor in midday heat, even in winter those flower knights would roast. He bit his lip. Perhaps we should retreat, at least tactically, to delay. No, Arianne was firm about it. We give battle here just as her grace commands. Targaryens never had Dorne's best interests at heart. We know this from the histories. Casting a glare at her commander, Arianne shook her head. In the last 3 decades, we've been battered, bloodied, and massacred by the likes of 4 great houses of the realm, and none of them were named Targaryen. She sighed and peered out at the assembling enemy formations. Back to your commands, you know what to do. Bowing, Daemon complied, while Edric pulled her in for a kiss. The young lovers lost themselves for a moment before it was over. If only for peace, get up on a quiet morning and rest under the shade of the trees. In her short life, Arianne had learned to push away such unrealistic fantasies. The Dornish had come well prepared. Honed after centuries of invasions and occupations. Nearly a dozen times they had been attacked with the intent of conquest, and every time the sons and daughters of Nymeria had beaten them back. The art of the ambush, of the utilization of the rocky, arid terrain to their advantage, was one the Dornish made their own. Every army took the lesson of Harlan Tyrell to heart, advancing either close to the sea or with massive wagon trains. Perfect targets for ambushes. Arianne's battle strategy, borrowed on such tactics, just adapted for an entire army rather than for small unit attacks. No further would they retreat. Not one more inch of Dornish territory would have reached horses trot atop. She and her men knew the price of failure. Both Aegon the Conqueror and Daeron the Young Dragon came close to crippling Dorne to the point of no recovery, and now Baelor Hightower was set in doing the same. The bannermen and non-combatants worked hard through the night, even the lords and knights pitching in to fortify their lines. They had come prepared for along with their weapons, rations, and armor. Each Martell bannerman carried a long, thin wooden log and a burlap sack with them. Holes were dug to fit the logs, while the dirt and sand excavated from the rocky hills. These logs were used to build a simple wooden palisade along the initial slope of the western side valley at the foot of the rolling hills to break up the Hightower heavy cavalry charges, while the sand-filled sacks piled up for a mobile fortification for the Dornish forces to mount during the coming clash. Such tactics dated back to Daeron's invasion, and Arianne and her commanders dredged it up. In the morning sun, Baelor Hightower and his own commanders, including both of his younger brothers, dismissed the enemy fortifications, if they could even be called that. Thin palisade and a low line of sand-filled sacks against a fully armored heavy cavalry charge. It was a very amusing jake. We'll run them over easily, Lord Oakheart announced with a flourish. Young and brash, he led the powerful house since the death of his father from rheumatism 3 moons before, and commanded 7,000 men on his own. Full attack along the line, overwhelmed them as the Dragon Bitch did to the Northerners at Duskendale. But Baelor was a veteran of several wars of the Bells and the Trident, of the relief of King's Landing and every attack from the Torrentine to here. He wasn't about to underestimate the Dornish. No, we attack smartly, drawing lines with his fingers through the unfurled map, the plots of his mind translated that morning into the Hightower strategy. 3 large clusters of heavy horses in a wedge position, 1 in the center and 2 on each flank, to shatter the Dornish defenses. Clustered in the middle and in the rear were the crossbowmen and heavily armored men-at-arms to exploit the shattered enemy formations. They outnumbered the Dornish 3-1, so such seemed to be enough. Victory filled the minds of the Reachmen just as the first trumpets blared, signaling the advance. Here they come, Arianne announced, at the front lines with her men. The armor plate of thousands of knights glinted in the sun, reflecting off like a clear beach. It was truly a breathtaking sight. Breathtaking and frightening, but the Dornish had steeled themselves for this. A line of spearmen stood at the bagged palisade, while the light skirmish troops that made the bulk of Dornish armies since time immemorial stood behind. Scimitars sheathed and bows were drawn. The three waves of horse, Oakhart on the left, Gunthor Hightower on the right, and Baelor personally leading the center, kept a slow trot to allow the infantry to catch up. The banners of half a dozen noble houses of the Honeywine whipping back and forth in the gentle morning breeze. Running through the middle of the valley was a dry riverbed, either sidelined with sandbanks deposited by late winter floods and unmoving. As powerful a brake on a horse charge as a muddy field. To truly have enough momentum, the Reach horse had to traverse it slowly, which hurt the overall charge when the trumpets finally announced it. Arianne and Edric chose their positions well. Emerging from the riverbed, only 400 yards from the first makeshift fences at the base of the hill, a thunderous rumble overcame the dusty field as thousands of horses erupted in a charge. While heralds and trumpeters had been drilled to coordinate the charges as they had before outside Blackmont and Starfall, the delays of crossing the riverbed found each of the three prongs charging at different times, but the short distance and the close proximity to the infantry encouraged Baelor to push this aside and attack. Commands came simultaneously from across the entire Dornish line. Knock! Spearmen crouching. The skirmishers stepped forward, pulling an arrow from their quivers and quickly drawing back their reflex bows. Light and powerful, easy to carry for a light infantry army. Some would fire over open sights, while the others angled upwards for deeper attacks. Hold! 50 yards out, the Reachmen depressed their lances, an enormous cloud of dust and sand kicked up by their horses' hooves, helms giving them an almost demonic appearance. 40 yards, 30 yards, 20 yards, close enough to see the whites of their eyes. To any observer untrained in battle and unknowing of the Dornish plan, there could be no hope for anyone to survive this. But even the rumble of 10,000 horse couldn't overcome the twin, ear-splitting roars that echoed from the mountains to the west. The infantry faltered, while the knights were too committed to halt and reform. Erozian didn't waste chances. Loose, the skirmishers followed her commands to the letter. Swooping from the west to the eternal shock of the Reachmen were two of Daenerys Targaryen's dragons, far too large and distinctive to be mistaken for anything else. Mounted atop Drogon the Black Dread Reborn was the Dragon Queen herself, silver hair styled in the intricate braids of a veteran Dothraki, Khaleesi, and fierce in her black and red battle dress like a goddess atop the heavens. Not allowing the Hightower army a moment to reform, the order came quickly from her lips. Jaehaerys, opening his maw as if to roar, Drogon let loose a jet of orange-red dragon fire that enveloped the center of the right column of cavalry. Dozens of men and horses were incinerated in an instant, further dozens trapped in their heavy armor plate as the dragon fire coated them, roasting them alive, screams and all. Across the battlefield, Viserion did the same thing to the Hightower left, continuing along the edge before Daenerys gave the order to pull up. She didn't know if the Hightowers had scorpions, nor would she take the chance. Upon the hills, the fighting had turned into a slaughterhouse of carnage. The sheer power of the knights had brought contact with the Dornish line, blasting right through the wooden palisade to engage directly with the spearmen. Infantry had a tougher time with it, being savaged by the Dragon Queen's attacks and the obstacles, but enough managed to scale the hill and clash with the skirmishers. Swords and lances bloody with the blood of their traditional enemies, the pride of the Honeywine ripped through scores of Dornish as they had this entire war. But between the continuous sheet of arrows and the rigid discipline of the normally hot-tempered Dornish warriors, the Martell forces stood their ground. Spearmen of Starfall, Blackmont, Watt, and Yarwood stabbed through or over the stockades at any Reachman that made it past the arrows and dragonfire, while Lord Geraldane, the Darkstar, led his detachment of heavy infantry to reinforce the beleaguered warriors in the center with their long swords and shields. Such reserves weren't needed at the flanks as the dragon's attack run severely weakened the other two cavalry prongs. Screeching in his dive, fire escaped from Drogon in short, deadly bursts, turning entire formations of infantry and crossbowmen into ash upon contact. East, Drogon, east. Dany screamed over the wind, smelling the acrid smoke wafting from the funeral pyres of hundreds of reachmen. Drogon roared in acknowledgement, his heavy wings beating hard as he ascended. Hearing Viserion roar behind her, Dany closed her eyes tight. She never enjoyed killing, but the thrill of riding her dragon into battle, as her ancestors did, died as visions of Jon evaporating into smoke filled her mind. Unwanted and unbidden, but there, shaking them loose, she resolved to end this. "Knock!" ordered Sir Humphrey, wiping the splattered blood and soot from his visor, ultimately tossing the entire thing on the ground, revealing a once handsome face of a tourney knight streaked with grime and grease. Hearing another roar, he flinched, slipping onto the ground. Humphrey watched as the Dragon Queen's mount blasted another portion of his brother's reserve force, incinerating them into ash. Fuck me. Heat baiting her from the harsh winds, Daenerys held tightly onto the spines, gritting her teeth as Drogon banked over the field. "Hi, boy. Climb." She needed to get above, reclaim her bearings, and spot the ways the Dornish would advance so she could attack again. Hurry. With a roar, Drogon beat his wings, ready to climb, but in doing so, bringing him right into the range of Sir Humphrey's archers. The younger son of Lethan Hightower didn't waste any time. Loose, longbows whacking in quick succession, the 100 or so arrows shot through the air. Drogon was fast, but these bowmen were experts, easily judging the proper means to aim at a moving target, firing in front of the dragon knowing it would soon pass right through the line of fire. Come on. Come on. One shot. One successful hit, and the entire war would be over. One blow, and his father would be avenged. Scales thick from age and experience, the arrows were barely a nuisance to the great dragon. Shutting his eyes closed on instinct, Drogon stood no chance at coming out of this scathed in any way. But Daenerys wasn't so lucky. In her leathers and with Drogon tilted as he banked, she lay exposed and unarmored. When the first arrow came at her, she tried to meld herself as close to the spine as possible. Each atch. Hot blood stung her eyes. Both Drogon and Viserion screeched, climbing skyward as further sounds of grief and worry escaped them. The presence of their mother was still there, strong and powerful, but she was hurt. She was in pain, and it drove them to pain. Wiping the worst of the blood from her eyes, streaking it across her forehead and cheeks, the pain of her dragons drove her own agony to fury. Inside the fire awoke. "Time to end this," she screamed into the wind. "Draker, it took only 2 attack runs from each dragon to convince Lord Baelor that all was lost. The cream of his forces either charred corpses or carpeting the ground in front of the Dornish defenses. Any further fighting would only result in a massacre. The final command blared from the heralds, white banners waving. An hour and a quarter after it began, it ended. Another victory. Even soaring above the great expanse of desert, Daenerys could witness it below her. Corpses blanketing the ground, the mustard-swathed figures of the Dornish herding the survivors of the Hightower army into large groups. Horse archers and crossbowmen stood to watch to make sure no funny business occurred. The seemingly quiet cheers rang out from the soldiers of Sunspear, Hellholt, Starfall, and the like as Daenerys flew by, exhorting Drogon and Viserion as their countrymen hadn't done for any past dragon. It felt thrilling. At least, it would if this didn't bring back memories. She would rather forget of another battle ended in decisive victory, and yet the only outcome the gods provided was grief and loss. The throbbing of her forehead, wound only now ceasing to ooze blood, added to the unwelcome feeling. As Drogon circled, preparing to land, Daenerys steeled her soul for what was to come. It would take all the strength and fire within her to get her through this. Ironically, the actual battle had been simpler. Stepping off Drogon's spines, she allowed him a gentle rub of his scales before she approached the waiting Princess Arianne. Her hair was pulled into a messy ponytail, leather armor covered in sand and grime, but her exhausted expression housed a smile. "Your Grace," she bowed, along with her guards. "You're hurt." "It looks worse than it is," Dany replied. Snapping her fingers, Arianne's command obtained results within seconds. "Can't be too careful. Let's get it seen to." A team of healers surrounded Daenerys, working with haste yet skill to apply herbs to the wound while wiping it down with a wine-soaked rag. "Hold still, Your Grace," one murmured when Dany winced. "Just let me apply the linen bandage." She gritted her teeth. Just be quick about it. They were true enough to their word, and before Daenerys knew it, she was walking alongside the Princess of Sunspear. "The day is ours." Daenerys returned the smile. Yes, it is. How many prisoners? Most of their army. The victory was total 5,000 or so casualties. So, exactly like Duskendale. So, if I understand Dosreki customs, your braids will only get more intricate now that you've notched another conquest. Arianne was more worldly than most Westerosi lords, Daenerys admitted with admiration, but she wasn't in the mood for small talk. Was Lord Baelor among the prisoners? Nodding, the princess motioned to a group of her guards, the lot of them soon dragging a dirty, bloody knight in battered armor that still looked high-quality, castle-forged steel. Baelor Hightower. Brought before Daenerys, the Dragon Queen took position on higher ground. Lord Baelor, it is an honor to finally meet one who was once a powerful bannerman of mine, or perhaps of House Tyrell. Body aching all over, Baelor rolled his shoulders, glaring at the Dragon Queen. Daenerys Targaryen, your beauty is as the songs say, though only those with the blackest of hearts would stoop as low as assassination. He eyed the bandaged wound with a smirk. So, Humphrey, got you. Gods don't bleed, so it appears you aren't one after all. He took pride in that. The Dragon Queen let that slide. I did not kill your father, Lord Baelor, nor did Princess Arianne have anything to do with it. Daenerys found that specific insinuation illogical. If we wanted destabilization, then killing a lord with a healthy line of succession is just ridiculous. Besides, Dorne was barely prepared for an invasion as it was after Euron's attack on Sunspear. Your conclusions were made in haste. Many dubbed him Baelor Brightsmile for his jovial attitude and charm, but the Lord of Hightower held no smiles that day. And I suppose you took her word for it, then. What a reputable source. At his sneer, one of the Dornishmen hit him in the stomach, making Baelor cough and sputter. To this Dany reacted strongly. One more hand on the prisoner, and I will have yours. From the fire in her eyes, all understood the certainty of her statement. Clearing her throat, she looked at Baelor. You may believe what you wish to believe to sleep at night, but the truth is you killed thousands of your bannermen for a lie. You killed thousands of my bannermen, Dragon Queen. Not I. His scowl attempted to cut off his whole face. Before you was merely a man who loved his father, determined to avenge him. Dany raised an eyebrow, her ire rising. And what of your nephew and sister? Driven into exile by Stannis Baratheon, or your good brother, niece, and other nephew, killed by Cersei Lannister. Where was your desire to avenge them? To this the haughty lord went silent, left alone with the thoughts undoubtedly that he had sided with the butchers of his kin in this war. But this is getting us nowhere. You have the ability to make amends by bending the knee to me now. Drawn from his guilt, Baelor scoffed. You expect me to bend the knee to you, Daenerys Targaryen. Another snort was followed by a chuckle, incredulous and contemptuous. Angling her head downward at Arianne Martell, the Princess of Sunspear crossed her arms, honey-brown eyes reflecting an equal contempt. You are in no position to be arrogant, Lord Baelor. It is my bannermen that hold steel, not yours. Or what, Dornish bitch? He hissed, nothing left to lose. Gonna kill me? Looking up, he found Vorgerian circling in the air, not far away, ready to descend and join Drogon on the ground, should his mother need him. Gonna burn me alive like Brynden Tully? Go right ahead. The mention of the Blackfish brought a whole flurry of emotions to Dainty. Regret in general, heartbreak as it concerned Jon, and a dark rage at Lord Baelor for bringing this memory back to life with the current situation. The parallels were undeniable. Watch your mouth, Lord Baelor, do not wake the dragon. He shrugged his shoulders. There are only two options. One, I live and go either home or to Sunspear as a prisoner, or I die by dragon fire on the field, and join my father in the embrace of the Seven, while you turn all of the Reach against you. I honestly do not care which. Growing tired, he eased himself to the ground, disrespectfully stretching out his legs. Do what you will, Daenerys Targaryen. Show the world just what a monster you are. All around her, the Dornish snarled and jeered, each of them having lost friends, lovers, children to the Reach invaders, hells, centuries past of hate, burned between the two kingdoms, as they struggled to supplant the other, the very same wheel that she vowed to destroy. Daenerys wouldn't succumb to the same hate, but her impassive fire burned hot nevertheless. Slowly she stepped forward, halving the distance between her and Lord Baelor. If such is your wish, very well. Drogon. From his perch atop the rocks, the Black Dread Reborn snaked his neck out towards his mother and rider. growling contentedly as Daenerys rubbed his snout. Amber eyes finding Baelor with a fury transmitted through their bond. Like Brynden Tully before him, the Lord of Hightower didn't budge from where he sat. I won't cower. No, I don't expect you will. Eyes locking with Arianne, who gave her a nod. Daenerys steeled herself. Baelor Hightower, for the crimes of treason and murder, I, Daenerys of House Targaryen, first of my name, sentence you to death. Countless dead upon the field of battle. What did one more corpse add to it, each time blood was spilt, be it that of a mighty lord or a common foot soldier? Daenerys would earn the ire of all regardless of what she did. Any last words? The happy toast of all the parties of the Reach had his lips curled into one of pure disgust. You are exactly what they said you were. Drop! Her command died on her tongue, outwardly unchanged, but the words hitting her at the core of her being. You are exactly what they said you were. Suddenly, her forehead ached. Not a dull sting or throb, but something pulsing, acute and agonizing. Jon's words in the same position following Duskendale. He may have been less blindly obstinate as the Blackfish, but he'd stood tall and stubborn in the face of Drogon as Lord Baelor did. Daenerys resisted the urge to clutch her forehead, trying instead to blink and will away the pain. Is this what Jon feels? Gods. She could only imagine his agony. Her mind began to overflow. Her fresh wound heated to a temperature she'd never experienced before. Hearing the same words, Jon spat at her, sent her into a tailspin. Her potential actions were called into question. In times of fury, she always turned to use her dragons. But for the first time, maybe ever, she asked herself why. How fleeting death became to her. Just as an arrow had grazed her, easily could have been fatal. A few inches lower, all the destruction she caused. How many lives she carelessly snuffed out just hours before. Countless lives lost over the course of her journey. As the fire plumed from Drogon's mouth, someone else's fire within them went out. How many had it been? There was no way of counting. Thousands, likely. Could there be another way? Could she have avoided killing all those people? Her frozen posture ended when the black dragon nudged her side. Eyes boring in on her with the undoubted silent urging. Mother, why are you hesitating? Why was she? Simply saying that it was because of Jon would be hasty. Without a sound, she looked to Baelor, then to Arianne, and then back to Drogon, violet eyes lost, almost haunted as she searched through her mind. The mind of a scared and neglected orphan girl, thrust into the same greatness of her ancestors as soon as walking into a pyre and emerging with 3 dragons hatched from stone. A journey that truly began with Drogon, Rhael and Viserion. What was she without her dragons? Daenerys knew. She could admit it to herself. Her plans were hers, but her children the means to achieve them. With Drogon, Rogiel, and Viserion, she saved herself from death, obtained the largest armies in the world, forged an empire, and returned to her homeland. Through her dragons, she has been blessed with the power to destroy armies, cities, even entire nations. I could snuff out all of Old Town in an instant, but that doesn't mean I should. Fire killed, uncontrolled. It could kill many, an infinite number, and control only resided with the person that set it. One use of it had nearly lost her Jon, could still cause me to lose him forever. Evil, mad, monster. Her brother didn't need the dragons to be called mad, but the power at her fingertips drew the comparisons to Daenerys. I heard about how you freed the slaves of Essos, a noble purpose, only for you to do the exact opposite in Westeros. Choice between bending the knee and burning alive. What sort of choice is that? Maybe not killing my friends with dragonfire, not holding me captive for weeks. I question why you wonder of my mistrust of you. Jon's words, flashes of 3 different encounters with him. The hate in his eyes, or at least ire. By the gods, it drove Daenerys the closest she came to hating herself since Drogon burned that shepherd girl. Any person could butcher their way to victory. Even the most simple of persons could forge an empire built upon ash and bone while mounted atop a dragon. Targaryen's answer to neither gods nor men. On Dragonback, no man nor god could touch them, and corrupted souls only followed. Faced with the same decision that led her to burn the Blackfish, Daenerys knew that she was at a crossroads. Was she the same as Stannis or Cersei? The same as Maegor the Cruel or her own father? A tyrant, a monster, or would she be the rightful queen? the breaker of chains. I give them a choice. Yet do I truly let them choose? Daenerys couldn't let anyone walk all over her, manipulate her, use her good nature to destroy her. The Masters tried and nearly ended House Targaryen. She couldn't be weak, but seeking strength through brutality would make her just another tyrant like the Masters or her father. No. Sighing softly, she gave Drogon a look, one that he understood, shifting away and ambling towards the rock, using it as a launch pad to ascend to the skies. I will not be the monster they see me as. I am not part of the wheel. Your Grace! Arianne seemed completely surprised. What are you doing? Something I should have done before, was her response. Lord Baxelier, Daenerys said louder, addressing him. You shan't die today. Resolved to die before this, it surprised him as well. If you expect me to bend the knee out of gratitude, I won't. As I said before, I don't expect you will. Circling him, the crunch of her boots on the gravel soil, and the contrast of the black battle dress and hair, a braided silver, made Daenerys far more intimidating than her size suggested. But there are other ways of ensuring compliance, a few being your brothers, Humfrey and Gunthor. Where threats to his person didn't faze him, such brought fear to his eyes. You monster, they're just knights, they planned nothing of this invasion. She scoffed. If I was going to kill anyone, I'd kill you, Lord Baelor. I don't practice treason by association, but most do. Stopping right in front of him, the burly Martell guardsmen made any attempt to attack her quite a foolhardy presumption. So your brothers will join Princess Arianne back to the Water Gardens, guests of hers until a time so convenient as to be certain of House Hightower's loyalty, and with you the rest of the honey wine. Gulping, Baelor went pale. Not just that, but I am in need of a lady in waiting. The stories Jorah told her of his life, she knew just the person. Your youngest sister, Lyness. She was married to my sworn sword, and as such, I believe I know her better than all others in your house. Hadn't she just returned from Essos? There was no reason to lie anymore. Yes, she will accompany me to Dragonstone as my lady in waiting. Gingerly, she patted the defeated lord on the shoulder. Bend the knee, don't bend the knee. It won't matter. But if you wish for your family's stay with Princess Arianne to be an uneventful one, then House Hightower is back under the auspices of House Targaryen. Understood. Broken, ashen-faced, Lord Baelor looked upon the face of a dragon personified. Understood, Your Grace. Offering a cold smile, Daenerys walked back towards the Dornish princess, head held high. All she wished at that moment was for Jon by her side. But there was little doubt that he'd be proud of her that day. That is where you are wrong, Cersei. Stannis, I am not my father.